plans, I just didn't bring them.
Case of trees suggest.
I mean, they're in a huge
If it
bag.
makes sense. Look it up.
Sometimes they say 3 years.
Yeah, I just don't think that years is a good
Hello. Test.
criteria.
I mean, some gardeners.
In terms of species, year, or size may not be the. I didn't think you'd be too.
So we have an
Sorry, I thought I'd get some nice language from Casey.
So we have a quorum. 1, 2, 3.
Can I say subject to language?
Whatever.
Casey,
She can come in whenever.
I definitely.
Welcome to the November ANC 3F meeting. I am Adam Tope, Chair of ANC 3F. If every commissioner can introduce themselves real quick, starting with David.
David Solorzano Lowell. I'm Commissioner from ANC 3F06 and also Secretary.
Mary Beth Ray, ANC 3F3.
I'm Bob Summerskill. I'm the treasurer and with 3F07.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Karen Perry, ANC 3F02.
Sally Gresham, ANC 3F04.
Manoli Praniotakis, 3F05.
Thank you. So I've circulated the agenda for the evening. Does anyone have additions or deletions to the agenda? From the one I previously circulated, I added an update on Park Van Ness as a separate item, and I added approval of some miscellaneous expenses that we can talk about at the end. Does anyone else have anything? All right, seeing none.
What about reports? What if somebody wants something other than that?
Motion to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It was approved unanimously. So the first item for this evening is the police report. So if some officers would like to come up. I know we had some specific requests to talk about pedestrian and traffic safety items. So I guess I know the person in charge of the traffic and pedestrian things in our ANC is here. So it'd be great to, if you want to come on up and introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little bit about the kinds of things you're doing lately, and I'm sure we have questions.
Sure. My name is Stephen Franchek. My last name is F-R-A-N-C-H-A-K. My first name is S-T-E-P-H-E-N. If you do that at dc.gov, you can reach me by email. I'm the traffic officer in PSA 203, which is the area that we're talking about this evening.
Cool. I guess, can you tell us a little bit about what kinds of issues you're seeing and things you're doing?
When you all send in your traffic complaints, it disseminates through the chain of command and gets to me. So if you do, please take my email address, and if you send them straight to me, I can address them at that time. It'll be a lot easier and quicker for everybody involved. So far, I've gotten Davenport, 2800 block of Davenport for speed enforcement. And I know you all have looked at it a couple of different ways. Police-wise, it's a little tough down there because of how small the road is and how narrow it is. I've done a lot of stop sign enforcement through there, which has gotten people to do a lot slower speeds. Got them to conform a little more for the community through there. I've also got several different complaints. I mean, is there any you want to talk about specifically?
Yeah, I
Sure.
have one.
Karen?
This involves Metro and hopefully your help. Connecticut and VZ Terrace.
Yes.
Now that the east side escalators are closed, we have a large number of residents crossing Connecticut Avenue in the morning.
Yes.
And a lot of them, I spoke to Lieutenant Roman last month about cars blocking the box there and pedestrians having to weave in and out, in addition to the fact that a lot of them cannot cross the street in the 21 or 22 seconds. I think it's 24 seconds, but the minute you step off the curb, it's down to 20. So we really need some help with police enforcement in the morning rush hours.
We've been down there. I've been down there I sit at Van Ness a lot and do the enforcement through there. Beezy's a little tough. You can give people 20 minutes across the street, and you're still going to have people not crossing correctly. Not saying that's right or wrong, that's just the inherent problem of crossing Connecticut Avenue. Metro is here, and they can talk a little more about the construction as far as that goes and how long they plan to take. for
That's
that
going to be
event.
approximately 5 to 6 months.
Yes.
We know how long, but I think the problem is,
Mhm.
Connecticut and Van Ness is it's not as bad as Connecticut and Beasley. We really need help at Connecticut and Beasley, because most people take that road to cross Connecticut.
Okay.
So we
I'll go
really
down
need
there.
help getting people across or stopping them or whatever before somebody
Okay,
gets
because
hit,
I've sat
run
down
over.
there before and I haven't seen a whole lot, but I'll gladly take care of it. Look a little more this week.
Please, can you?
What time are you typically there?
In the morning time, I come in at 5:30.
Well, that doesn't help.
5:30 and 6:30,
Until,
2 and 3.
oh, so you're there for that whole block of time?
And I'm the traffic officer for the whole PSA area.
No, I'm just wondering, like, what time have you been sitting at VZ in Connecticut?
Usually I come through in rush hour because rush
Okay.
hour is when it's big. I
Yeah.
also come back and look at it at lunchtime, depending upon what the timeframes of the other complaints. Davenport's been a big complaint lately, so I've been over there in the rush hour times, catching the people that are coming through, going to school through there. Because if you're not familiar with that area, it's tough over there. There's no sidewalks, and there's a lot of people, older and younger, that walk. They walk their dogs or walk their kids to school. And so it's a lot of street walking. And then the leaves haven't been picked up yet, so they're piling up and taking a narrow road and making it more narrow.
I'm following up on what Mary Beth said. We really need your help in rush hour. I don't need it at 5 and 6 in the morning, because that's not when the residents are crossing the street. It's to go to work, which is usually during rush hour.
7:30 to 9?
I would say, I would
You
say
just
it's
said
even
you would
later
be
than
there
that.
at rush
The majority of the
8.
time is 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah, and I'm
8 to 9,
there at
whatever.
that time every morning.
Okay.
And I've observed, and I don't know if it's you, but I've observed police at, I think, Wyndham and Yuma, and then maybe somebody in an alley on the west side of Connecticut.
Wyndham.
And that doesn't, I don't quite understand why that location, because then from that location, it seems like it would be difficult to catch somebody at VZ in Connecticut.
Wyndham, depending upon who you've seen there, the 2900 block is what you're talking about? By the liquor store.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, a lot of that's been me in the morning time because it's a traffic complaint. There's a school bus that picks up there. And some of the people that drop the kids off there are having problems with the delivery drivers blocking up the whole street because that
Okay.
one block's very narrow. And it also has that parking garage that goes down around the backside.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, what school there?
It is a Jewish school that
At
picks
Wyndham?
up there.
Do they have permission?
Yeah.
Everybody I've asked has given them permission to use the lot the lot. They pick up right there on the liquor store parking lot.
The school buses are not allowed to be in the liquor store parking lot. Illegally.
Just saying that's where their pickup is.
Do you know what Jewish school?
I don't have that information with me.
Because that's something we need to talk to DDOT about, because that is not a school bus pickup location. We had a lot of problems with school buses at that location when the Rock Creek Academy was there. That street is basically the entranceway for the Giant parking lot, the entrance to the Van Ness North loading dock, CVS loading dock. It's not a school pickup and
AU.
drop-off point.
AU's
AU's office building is there
Yeah.
now?
What time does the bus come there?
That bus is there between 7:10 and 7:20 normally.
7:10 and 7:20. And it's in the liquor store parking
They
lot?
either do there or right outside on Wyndham to pick up there.
But that's blocking the entrance to the buildings that need the deliveries. And that's
why
not,
we moved most of the delivery trucks on and made sure that the street stays open.
except that that's not fair to the stores. We have, no school has come to our ANC, and it's not a school in our ANC. So I don't think that bus is supposed to be there, nor have they DDOT
Perhaps we can
approved
take
it.
this, I don't think.
Yeah,
I mean,
but I mean, he needs
Perhaps
to,
we
would
can
you
figure
please
it
let
out
us
of-
know what school it is?
I assume it's the same school as the bus that goes around. But we can figure it out later.
Yeah, the
I've
one
heard
that
no
picks up
complaints
on
from businesses
Albemarle?
about it
Is it the
either.
Jewish Primary
Yeah,
Day
I think
School?
so. But we can figure it out later. Okay.
Yeah, because you can't block
Is
the
there
street.
any
for that.
other pedestrian or traffic-related questions for him?
As you look at me.
I don't know.
Park Van Ness, where the demolition is going on
Uh-huh.
in the 4400 block. Mhm.
Was just there today with DDOT.
Okay.
DDOT's who removed the fences because their permits were not correct. So they have a meeting Thursday with the DDOT inspector, and
My understanding the meeting is
Her name?
tomorrow.
it's Thursday. Her name is Nicole Summers.
Nicole Summers. Okay.
SUMMERS or SL?
SUMMERS.
And she is the DDOT what inspector? Public space inspector?
She's the one that's coming through, and she's there's two of them that are signed up this way.
Uh-huh.
That's her project, that she's to make sure that they follow each and every rule as far as their permits and everything else.
Okay, that's very interesting because there's another inspector. She is brand new and she went today and closed down the job. She knows nothing about the project, is what I have found out.
She didn't close that one. Not when I was there. We were there this morning. I was there this morning with her at about 10:30.
Right, but she said either move the chain link fence back or I'll put a stop work order in.
That's between
So-
her and the person there.
Well, it's the developer. Who was the other inspector?
I don't know. He wasn't there. I've never met the other one. I know that she told me there's only two of them that work this side of town. I
Okay.
haven't met the other one.
Is there anything the police can do to help with the pedestrians walking in the street and not following the proper signage that says please cross at this location at Albemarle and Wyndham?
While I was there today,
Yes.
I spoke to everybody I found not doing it correctly. It's a learned behavior. People see something, they're so used to walking, some people don't want to take the time to turn around and walk back.
Right.
The one lady that I spoke to today, she's gonna walk the other side of the street, because as she informed me, she's legally blind. So I said, please, for the next, so many months, please use the other side of the street.
Thank you for doing that.
That way she doesn't run into the fence that
Right.
comes back up. I do know the DDOT inspector, she's trying to hold off the fence coming all the way out to the avenue until it's absolutely necessary for them to start breaking up the sidewalk and the planters that are there. So she's pushed that back, and she told me the meeting is on Thursday.
Okay.
So maybe
I
you
will,
have
I
more
will do a
updated
report of
information.
what I know from BF Saw later in the meeting,
Perfect.
but that's good. I mean,
That's
is there
just
any
what I
way
was
we
told.
can get more police presence?
Yeah,
to-
I'll go do that. I've been.
Especially at rush hour?
Well, I can't be both places.
You
I'm
can't
trying
be
to
everywhere.
I know, but he's got other people,
Yeah,
right?
We'll see if I can get the other people that are on daytime, and I'll pass it along to the evening shifts to see if they can help out a little bit more with the people up that way also.
You know, I
That would be
think
great.
maybe I'm crazy, but rather than having the police cars park at Connecticut and Human, and I see one over by the UDC side, that bus turnaround zone that's always parked in their cars, we need some police to really be out at some of these projects on the street. You know, helping with this traffic and getting
Versus in the
people to
car.
do, versus sitting in their cars.
Okay. I can
I'm
just
being
pass along
on-
the suggestions. That's not me. I mean, I can only do what I'm instructed to do. I mean, when I'm out at the different locations, I'm out of the vehicle and I stop cars quite often and give tickets if needed.
Great. Do any other commissioners have a comment or question?
We're happy if you get cameras to supplement your work.
Cameras be tough.
We like traffic and speed cameras.
I would like a block-the-box camera.
That's fine too.
Davenport, though, I know that's somebody's complaint here, the 2800 block.
Yeah.
It's tough down there. If you, the strong suggestion I would make for that block is to see if you can get your speed humps put in. Speed cameras are, I'm not fully fully trained on how that goes on. It's just so windy and narrow for that. But the speed humps, I think, would deter a lot of your problems, even if it's just a temporary fix. It'll deter most of the traffic that cuts through that doesn't want to slow down for it, to send the problem another spot. Hopefully force them back up to Military to Connecticut and around.
It looks like you guys have a call. I'm not sure.
In reference to the cameras, excuse me, I'm Sergeant Johnson, I'm Sergeant for the PSA. In reference to the cameras, it's a process they must go through. We can't just eat out there, just pick cameras there in those different locations.
The process of the cameras, my name is Sergeant Sharon Garner, and for years, I've been one of the main people that have handled a lot of the automated enforcement program. So the process is that you have to contact lisa.sutter@dc.gov. Lisa Sutter, they'll do a feasibility study and determine whether or not they can put a camera in that particular location. So the feasibility studies, it could be either they can put a temporary camera there, because I know you've seen all the boxes around. They can either do that, or they can have an officer sit in the locations and do a manual study.
We've had Lisa Sutter at a previous meeting.
Okay.
And,
Yeah.
we're very happy to have her.
Okay.
And we talked to her a lot about it, so.
Okay.
She's
So that's
familiar.
the process for the camera.
And that's for stop signs or
That's
for
for
anything?
any automated enforcement for the District of Columbia, whether it's a stop sign, red light, any of the cameras that you need, blocking the box, speed on green,
Okay.
you need to contact Lisa Sutter.
Okay.
You know, I
Thank
know
you.
when Lieutenant Brosh-Navis was with the police force, he used to periodically assign somebody to Connecticut and VZ for the blocked box, and just doing the last car, not all of the cars. It was over 200 tickets in a week. So,
That doesn't surprise me.
yeah, remember when he used to come and say that?
Well, does anyone in the audience have a question at all? Dave?
Hi, David Dickinson with First Elementary. I appreciate all the work you're doing on connected evidence. As a parent of an elementary school children, I'm wondering how much you visit all the elementary schools and the stop signs near those schools. For example, at Van Ness and 37th Street, pretty major thoroughfare on Van Ness. You guys sit all 2 blocks away. You've got First Elementary, 2 blocks away. I'm sure there are instances near Birch and other schools. While I appreciate with the metro traffic, I would suggest that setting those up for full time and navigating more of the metro traffic. So hoping you take an opportunity to look at this.
Okay.
Sir?
I just want to thank Officer Brancho for your work on down Fourth Street. 4 or 5 of the neighbors have already commented on it.
We can't.
And it is very helpful.
Thank you.
Well, non-traffic,
What's that?
non-traffic issue?
Sure, Manila, you have a quick non-traffic issue.
Just so I'm on Nebraska Avenue, and there was arrest a couple weeks ago of somebody taking packages off of the doorstep, and it was just by chance that somebody across the street happened to see it in progress, and there was arrest, and I think they later went back and found he had taken 2, including some frozen seafood. But just with the holidays coming up and people ordering more things online and so forth, if there's any advice, tips, so forth, or particular attention in the holiday period to these kinds of issues.
I mean, in terms of leaving,
Well, if there's any-
deliveries and packages.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what more can be done, and this was a case where it was just by chance somebody happened to witness it, but if we are recommending, I know some people are put things in the back, but if there's anything that the police are doing to look at this issue, especially in the holiday period.
Well, ironically enough, one of the topics, because we do a daily roll call, we do a daily roll call training, and one of the items that we talked about yesterday was actually the officers being very vigilant now that the holiday season is approaching, for the officers to be more aware of what's going on in terms of the different neighborhoods, the different businesses, making sure that if you see anything and matter of fact, the officer that arrested the gentleman that stole the package was one of my officers. And so just them just being more aware of what's going on.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming to our meeting and talking to us about traffic and pedestrian stuff. So appreciate
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is commissioner announcements. If you're a commissioner and you have a quick announcement, feel free to make it. We're adding a new reports section. So basically, for longer announcement type things, we'll have reports near the end of this meeting. So I'll start with David, if you have anything.
No announcements.
Mary Beth.
I have 4 announcements. The first is I'd like to thank everybody who participated in Daffodils Day. We planted 3,000 daffodils at Van Ness in Connecticut, and we had over 50 volunteers. So I'd like to especially recognize Manoli Priniatakis and his wife and children, and Sally Gresham and Bob Summerskill for all getting their fingernails dirty. Sally Farber Bandier gave us the bulbs in honor of her father. John Shorb Landscaping Company contributed supplies and help. Calvert Woodley, Starbucks, Giant, the UPS store, Walgreens, and Leo's Cutting Edge Barbershop all contributed, and we're grateful. So late March, early April, it should be beautiful, and we'll celebrate again. The second announcement is that a public hearing was held on the Broad Branch Road renovations on November 5th in this room, and I testified. Comments are due on November 22nd, and I believe we'll discuss the resolution later in tonight's meeting. Third announcement, I'd like to thank the Student Conservation Association. With funding from DDOT and from the National Park Service, they installed some beautiful wooden retaining walls and erosion control and steps in Soapstone Valley. So if you haven't seen it, have a walk and appreciate their work. And the fourth announcement is that the Vision Committee, Van Ness Vision Committee, will meet next as a full committee on January 10th, which is a Friday, between at 11 o'clock at UDC. And that information will be available on the website. That's all.
Great, thank you. Bob?
In responding to a constituent's concern, I asked DDOT to remove a no parking sign from Tilden Road east of 29th Street. DDOT agreed that there was no reason for the sign. This has created 2 additional legal parking spaces. ANC 3F was the only one of 15 ANCs out of 40 that submitted the required paperwork to the Office of the District of Columbia Auditor to have direct deposits of the DC allocation. 7 of those 15 required corrections, not us. And once all the ANCs turn in their forms, we can have direct deposits. Right now, DC is cutting checks and mailing them to banks, and that's not helping anybody.
Good job, Bob.
Great, thank you, Bob. I have a quick announcement. The bike share station that used to be in front of where Park Van Ness is going is being moved. It's now going to the corner of Connecticut and Tilden, basically at the entrance to Intelsat's park. So that should be in soon. Karen?
I have no announcements, but I want to commend Bob. We haven't been in trouble since he's been our treasurer.
Someone from the auditor's here, so she can answer.
He does a great job.
Thank you.
Sally?
I have no announcements.
I have no announcements. All right, thank you. Next item, if you are a member of the community and have an issue or wish to say something that's relevant to ANC 3F that's not on our agenda, you can come up to our microphone and speak about whatever. If you just introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, I'm John Rollins. I live on Davenport Street.
Okay.
And been reading a lot in the Current about the zoning overlay. This really affects the whole city. And I wondered if we've taken any position on that as an ANC. I've read in one of the articles that many of the ANCs have voted for a delay of 90 or 120 days in the implementation of it, because the 1,000-page document from the Office of Planning just came out last month, and not many people have read it yet, and they don't really know how it's going to impact them. And it affects the entire city, apparently. Any feedback for me on that?
So we've not passed any resolutions on zoning. We haven't really spent any significant time looking at it. It's certainly something we could start looking at if there's specific issues you have in mind. I know some of the hot topics are like
Parking.
accessory dwelling, parking, things like that. So if those are
Sure.
what we should spend our time on. we could
Those are
certainly
the
do
two
that.
big ones from what I've been reading. Accessory tenants. You can automatically have a tenant in any single-family home without getting approval ahead. And maybe the greater one for the Connecticut Avenue corridor would be eliminating the need for parking in apartment buildings. So new apartment buildings, the residents would park up and down our streets all over the place. And I know that's the big issue for other ANCs that have asked for a delay so that this doesn't go into effect immediately. They're asking for, in one case, a 120-day delay so people would have a chance to read it. The report just came out last month. It's 1,000 pages. Have any of you read it?
I started it.
And just
And we have it.
would encourage you to, well, at this point, I suppose too late, but there was extensive, there was extensive rounds of meetings throughout the course of the year, all throughout the city. I attended 3 of them.
Actually, it's more than 1 year. But nobody knew what they were going to come out with in their
Sure.
final pronouncement, which just came out last month. So it's hard to get too upset about something that hasn't been formally proposed yet.
Mr. Rollins, I have a concern, and that is that if we don't pass a resolution tonight, it could be too late. But my other concern is this: they've already had, it's not just enough to, I think, ask for a 120-day delay, because they've already had hearings with a 120-day delay, and I'm not sure what other ANCs have passed, also include a new round of hearings? Because the zoning commission's been hearing from communities for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, since it came out a few weeks
Yeah.
ago, they've been holding hearings, but now the hearings are over, and it all happened so fast before
But I think
many of us, or any of us, may have
I guess
even
what
read
I'm
the document.
asking is the delay would have to include not just the zoning commission giving a 120-day delay to their decision. I mean, what about a new round of hearings so that people such as you could read it and have time to go testify?
If that's
You know,
what it
If
takes.
the hearings are over, then it doesn't matter whether there's a delay or not. I guess that's
Well,
what I'm saying.
the hearings happened before it could even be reported on. I mean, I read the Current every week, and in their latest Wednesday edition, just last Wednesday, they could only report on certain of the hearings that had taken place. The rest of them hadn't. In fact, the one on parking being eliminated in the high-rise apartment buildings, that hearing had not taken place yet, and now they're over.
Well, that's
And
why
we
I
still
guess I'm
haven't seen it in
asking.
the paper yet as to any editorial coverage or news coverage.
I guess that's why I'm asking, what good is a delay if there aren't any new hearings?
I guess
We should ask for hearings too then, if
Well-
that's your recommendation.
We could certainly, let's look into specifically these 2 issues. I know we've circulated a copy of that 1,000-page document, and people have it and are looking.
I know many
That-
people
that
ask
can't
Office of
be
Planning for a summary of what the changes would be to Current, and Office of Planning said they could not provide that and would not provide that because it'd be too much effort, I guess.
I don't think that was the issue, from what I understand, the fact that the whole thing has been redrawn. It's not a question of just redlining an old copy. It's totally revamped, revised. I mean, it was,
they
yeah.
should be able to
They
figure
could
it
still
out.
write a summary,
Well,
I do it all
even
the
though
time.
it's,
I
yeah.
know, but I'm just saying, would
Um,
you add campus plans to your list?
Campus plan.
Yeah.
Sure.
If we're going to add,
Sure.
just specifically single out things.
And if you're a member of the community and have other concerns in the zoning code, feel free to email me and I'll add it to our list. But we'll take a look at it and figure out something. Thank you.
Should we do something tonight? You
I'm not
indicated
personally prepared to
I'm
do
not
anything, but
it's going to be too late, I guess, if we don't do it
I
tonight.
don't know. Is it too late?
Yeah, probably.
But I wonder if that's part of their strategy.
We can submit testimony for the record.
Okay. Could do that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'll try to figure out when the due date is.
I'm just
continue,
saying
and
that-
we'll figure out. I don't think anyone's prepared to make something this evening, unless someone is. They can bring it up in a little bit. But thank you. We'll definitely look at those issues and Karen's issue. Thank you. Dave?
Hi, good evening. David Dickinson with Hearst Elementary School. Hearst is, I think, at 3900 or so block, 37th Street. I had brought the issue of pedestrian and vehicle safety up before when the DC Police was here, but as some of you know, Hearst Elementary is going through a renovation and expansion, and across the street from Hearst is Sidwell Middle School, and then the high school is behind that. Basically from Upton Street on 37th all the way to Quebec is a traffic nightmare and is a real hazard and a real death trap waiting to happen, frankly, for the kids at both of those schools and others that use those facilities. We are hoping to have DDOT come and visit next week to examine painting a crosswalk or two in that area, but I'm wondering if the ANC would consider something a little more formal for the longer term to mitigate the traffic there during the morning and afternoon rush hours, which might include anything as drastic as a one-way street during those times to no parking on certain sections of 37th Street. I know that the Springland Farm community would have a strong opinion about that, and a lot of others would have opinions that need to be expressed. But the time that school was built in 1928, and I don't know when Sidwell was built, but it's ridiculous that the conditions exist there, and I'm hoping you guys can help us out.
Sure. I know we've talked about this a bit, and I think, I'm thinking maybe we'll start a committee of some sort to kind of bring up some different options and then circulate those in the community and get some ideas. If that makes sense to you.
I think it does at this point.
Okay.
Again, there's some short-term measures I think that'll happen, hopefully without a lot of the typical analysis that might be done. But for the longer term, I think that kind of committee or task force is probably appropriate.
Sure, that sounds good.
There is a process for collecting signatures for a traffic calming petition for them to do an assessment, and it's and unfortunately that is a part of the process, and it's a little bit painful. It's 75% of the households
Luckily,
on
there's
each
only one
affected
household.
impact. So there's only one household. That
You gotta get that one, and I know they'll sign it. So I'm not hugely concerned about that process.
Okay, so if you are looking at that,
that's certainly a good step. Yeah,
you do have to.
So what's included? I'm sorry. What's included in the definition of traffic calming measures? I mean, is it speed bumps?
Yeah,
anything.
Any
Speed bumps
measures, and they do prefer to look at things as sort of holistically.
To tax.
Mr. Dickinson?
In my experience, if we provide them with items that we would like them to look at, it facilitates a better report.
Okay.
So we should probably still do
Yes,
that.
it looks for ideas.
Karen?
Mr. Dickinson, have you talked to Sidwell at all?
Yeah, Sally Shelby, the principal at Sidwell Middle School.
And the reason I'm saying that is when they did their expansion, they had a traffic control plan because of the number of cars on 37th and the parent pickup and drop off. And I'm wondering if that's being followed because that was part of their zoning order.
Well, not to speak for Sidwell or for Sally Shelby, but I do know that they travel in one direction, but that street is fundamentally pretty narrow, and as they line up, if there's any traffic coming the other way, and there's a bus or delivery truck, all bets are off. All best intentions, they're probably following the traffic plan, is my guess.
I think I looked at it once. It was just delayed arrival departure from the other school. It was nothing.
That's staggered from.
Yeah,
from
but
Hearst.
as we know, that doesn't really work that well.
Yeah, but we'll revisit that.
Yeah, I just think I want to throw that into the mix.
Sure.
Because we need their cooperation too.
Yeah, and I think we've talked to them, and I think they're interested in fixing this. So
yeah,
I'm not concerned about.
Yeah, they're definitely
them
part of
opposing
this.
No, I'm not saying they're opposing. I just think it needs to be part of the solution.
Yeah, no, I agree. Great.
Okay.
So I think what I'll do is I'll talk to you and some other people in the community, and next month maybe we'll propose a formal group, and we'll start working on the traffic assessment and get everything rolling.
Just as long as it's a public and transparent process.
Sure.
Definitely want the
You got it.
the affected neighbors. Great, thanks.
Thanks. Is there any other members of the community? If you can come on up, feel free.
You need to come to the microphone.
Do you mind coming to the microphone?
Otherwise, people at home can't hear you.
Or see you.
Well, or see you.
My name's Anthony. I'm from Councilmember Che's office. I do constituent services. If anyone follows the listserv,
I do.
that's me. So you can put a face to the name. My card's in the back. If anyone has anything constituent services related they want to talk to me about, pick up my card, shoot me an email.
Great. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. When did you join Mary's staff? Because I've been
June.
seeing your emails.
June officially, but I have been there for about a year and a half.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else? Okay.
Michael Fabricant's here too.
Michael is here. Michael Fabricant from the mayor's office is
From
here.
the mayor's office.
Welcome. He is also wonderful if you need something done as well. Okay, next agenda item is a presentation by Clifford Tatum, who directs DC Board of Elections regarding the precinct realignment proposal. I guess if you could tell us all a little bit about the proposal and how it came about and
Absolutely.
plans, and
Thank you for
I
having
appreciate it.
me. I'll pass around a map of the board to show the specific SMD couplings that we proposed in the plan. My name is Clifford Tatum. I'm the Executive Director for the DC Board of Elections, and thank you for having us today. We sent a plan out to each of you to take a look at and to talk with your constituents about. The plan does a number of different things that we believe will make the elections process that much more efficient for voters as well as the administration of elections. The first would be to redraw precinct boundary lines to match the existing S&D boundary lines. Of course, you know the council draws the S&D boundary lines. The Board of Elections is charged with drawing the precinct lines, which are then approved by the council. As we went through the 2012 election cycle, we saw a lot of ballot styles, and that's particular specific ballots for each of the SMDs at each of the polling places, causing long lines, delays in voting. So it came to our attention that we should adjust these precinct lines to adjust the flow of voters. By adjusting the precinct lines to the SMD lines, we can evenly distribute the number of voters to each polling place. And the second part of the plan would be to implement a new numbering system so that the numbers that we designate to each polling place would actually indicate what ward the precinct is located in, as opposed to it being a simple 1 through 143. As the plan indicated for your particular ANC, and as indicated on that map, we've proposed a few relocations of polling places. Now, what's important for you to think about and to realize is the precinct lines themselves are not of grave importance to your voters. What your voters are really concerned about is where they go to vote, what's their location. So as you look at the plan, we've proposed to relocate some of your voters out of most of your precincts. Most of your SMDs have 2 to 3 polling locations serving the one SMD. So the idea is to create one polling location that serves your entire SMD. And we believe we've identified locations that would be efficient for each of your SMDs. What we'd like for you to do is to take a look at what we've proposed and determine, is this good for my SMD? And if the location that we've offered is not what you believe to be the best location, then give us what we think would be an alternative so that we could retweak, revisit the plan, revise something that works for everyone, and we continue moving the plan forward. Initially, as we proposed the plan, we'd hope to have it implemented by the April primary. That is not the case. We're getting a lot of feedback. We're seeing some areas where we have to make adjustments to the plan. So for the April primary election, all the existing polling places as they are now will be in effect for the April primary, except for those places that are closing by design of that facility, and we'll have to relocate you, and we'll talk about that in a different conversation. But what we sent to you was a coupling that shows, for instance, I'll start at the top here. 3F05 is being coupled with 3F06. Both of 3F05 voted at Murch School as well as Capital Memorial Church. There were 311 voters at Capital Memorial Church that we believe we relocate to Merch School. So for Commissioner Brenda Titus, yes, those 311 voters we'd like to move to Merch. Your 311 voters are going to talk to you about whether or not that's a good idea for them. For Commissioner Lowell, you currently vote at Merch, so you would stay at Merch.
Okay, wait a second. Can you slow down? So 3F05 and 3F06 are at Merch.
That's correct.
And Commissioner Lowell is 3F?
06.
He's 06, okay.
Which is basically Merch.
So the 3F03, which is Commissioner Ray, currently votes at Capitol Memorial Church, would stay at Capitol Memorial Church. 3F04, which is Commissioner Gresham, has 163 voters at Edmund Burke School, and we would propose to relocate those voters to Capitol Memorial Church. You currently have 1,336 voters voting at Capitol Memorial Church. So your constituents at Edmund Burke.
Where are those from? Where are those 300?
Those 163?
I didn't get those. I've never.
The folks on Connecticut in the building next to the Park Van Ness.
That's part, no, they
Park
voted Merch. They voted
They
Burke.
go to Merch.
They go to Burke.
They go to
won't
Burke?
be going there.
That's what he's saying.
They go to Burke now,
He
and
moved
we'd like to
Burke
move them.
Okay,
people
Capitol
to
Memorial.
yeah, that makes sense.
Capitol
Yes.
Memorial.
And then we
So Park,
have
Connecticut, yeah.
3F02, Commissioner Perry, you currently vote at Burke. You would stay at Burke. And Commissioner Summersgill, you vote at Edmund Burke as well as Eaton School. You have 235 voters at Eaton School that we would propose to relocate to Edmund Burke. And Commissioner Tope, you are listed as a new location, and that's what we really want to talk about.
Okay.
Initially, we had hoped to acquire space at UDC. That's not going to work for us, so we are in a searching pattern, if you will, to find a location to serve your voters. Currently, you have 446 voters that vote at Eaton School.
Right.
And then you have 208 voters at Second District.
Yep.
And 859 voters at Merch.
Yep.
So those three precincts we'd like to combine into one. We're just not sure what one location will best serve all three of those particular precincts. So we'd like to have some additional conversation with you about what you think would work for us in your area.
Sure.
Chinese embassy.
What's that?
Chinese embassy.
Sure.
So
They're all in my apartment building.
the plan as drafted doesn't have a radical impact on your district, on your S&D, on your ANC as it does other ANC. So what we're asking all commissioners to do is to talk with your constituents, give the Board of Elections feedback on the proposal. If you like the way it's drawn now, then we'd like for you to pass a resolution or to send some letter, some sort of correspondence to us so that we can make a record of what your concerns and comments are. If you think something should be changed, send us those comments and we'll be glad to revisit the plan. Our public comment period initially was to close on October the 30th. We extended that to November the 30th. We anticipate having some additional meetings in December, so for the most part, the month of December will also be a comment period. Once we finalize the plan, we'll send the plan back out to commissioners and have some additional conversations with folks who raised concerns specifically about their ANC. And at the end of the day, we have to submit it to council to approve the precinct lines themselves. What we'd like to do is see it implemented for the November general election, which will give us an opportunity to make tweaks to the process well before the November, the 2016 presidential election. But we believe as the plan is drawn, it's a good plan. Obviously, there's room for improvement, and we look forward to your comment to make it work for us.
Great, thank you. If any
Mr.
commissioners
Tatum,
have a
you-
quick question,
I do.
we'll start with Mary Beth.
Thank you. This was a clear presentation. I appreciate it. But I'm concerned about the deadline. You would like a resolution by November 30th?
Or somewhere around, as soon as you all can come to some decision about it. It doesn't have to be a resolution, it can be a letter. We've had a number of the commissioners simply send us letters that say we are in agreement.
Okay. So
No
we could
objection.
send you a letter after November 30th, and you would still
That'd be fine.
give it
I
great
think-
weight.
Karen,
think-
let Mary Beth
Oh,
finish.
okay.
Or you- Okay, so you can send letters in your individual capacity.
And
as
let
well.
me say that once we submit it to council, council would open up a public process as well, so that there'd be public hearings. They have to pass the resolution by, the precinct line changes by resolution, so that's the whole legislative process as well. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities to speak to the matter.
Great, thank you. Karen, you have a quick question?
I have a few questions. One, how many commissioners actually were impacted by having to be in more than one precinct? I mean, I forgot how many ANC commissioners we have, but how many actually were impacted?
So there's 296 SMD commissioners. I don't have the answer as to how many were actually impacted, but I can tell you that from 296 commissioners to SMD districts, we created 551 ballot styles, which means that for every precinct that SMD appeared in, we had to create a separate ballot for that SMD contest. So what we found is that at least 75% of our precincts had more than one SMD involved.
I think also following up on what Mary Beth said, we can't give you an official resolution until, well, we would have to meet in the month of December in order to do that. Well, we'll talk about that, but.
We are having a meeting our normal day in December.
Third Monday in
No
December,
discussion
third
needed.
Tuesday in December. But anyway, my biggest concern about this whole thing and looking at it is in order to accommodate the commissioners and less ballots for you, less workers, whatever, less polling places that you have to cover, it makes it much tougher on a lot of voters to get to these polling places because they're not as close to their homes as they were before. And I think my concern is I don't want to dampen down voter turnout because people can't get to these new polling places. To me, that's more important to get the voters out and get them voting than it is to accommodate and make it easier for the commissioners to run that are in more than one district or more than one precinct. No, I'm just saying that is a big concern.
You're exactly right. We are very cognizant of the fact that requiring some voters to walk a little further than they have in the past could have an impact on those voters turning out. So that's one of the reasons that we're asking you to talk with your constituents about what impact will this have. Now, keep in mind that as polling places open and close for any particular election, if we had to move a polling place because of some physical access issue, then that would be a relocation that we would have to occur regardless. So while the plan is a concerted effort to relocate polling places that would make it convenient for the entire SMD, at the end of the day, we are concerned. We don't want to dampen the voter turnout. And as part of this entire process, we're going to open additional early vote centers. So for those voters who'd like to take advantage of early voting, there will be 13 early vote centers in the district as opposed to 8.
But people also need to get to them, and some of them are not that accessible by Metro, being honest. And residents I know have told me they've had trouble getting to some of these various locations.
But what we want to do is cut down on the confusion of the multiple ballots at any one polling place. Currently, some of our precincts have over 6, 7, 8 ballot styles, and that's not necessarily the case for you all. And maybe the 2 or 3 ballot styles in your particular polling place is not causing much voter confusion, but for some of our ANCs, some of our SMDs, it is causing a problem, and those are the ones that we really need to address.
Mr. Tatum, is there a reason that when we just did ANC redistricting, this was not done in conjunction with that and telling us to draw the boundary so that we didn't have this?
Yes, ma'am. So as you think about the redistricting process takes place every 10 years. So
and we just did it 2 years ago.
So as the council redraw the ward lines, they then redrew the SMD lines. And according to redrawing those SMD lines, we then shifted our precinct lines. So based on that shift is when we saw this is the impact of those redrawn wards and those redrawn SMDs, and we have to do something about it. Now the question has been raised, could we have done it at the same time?
Well, we could have been told, don't do it so that somebody's in more than one precinct.
Well, but the basis of the SMDs is based on your census population. So they're looking at residential numbers versus voter registration numbers. But certainly we've heard the question and we understand that.
Karen, do you have any other
No.
questions? All right, Bob.
So-
Sally, you have a quick question?
Thank you for the very succinct presentation. Do you have what you read from that you could send us?
So we do have the plan. I can resend you the plan, and we have some talking
Okay.
points that I can certainly send to you.
Okay, that would be good.
I think what you're asking is so that we can know who's going from where.
going
Yeah,
from
you
where.
went so fast that we
Yeah,
didn't get all
where
of
is-
that.
It's in the plan.
Whereas
It's in the plan that we
not-
received.
No, it
already.
isn't. No, it isn't.
No,
Yes,
it's
it
not.
is.
I've read that plan.
Can you resend us the chart?
Yes,
Yes.
I will resend you the chart as well as, I think you're asking about the portion where the number of voters are in
Yes,
exhibit.
that's
Yes,
what I would like.
that's what we-
Yes.
and I would like
I
that
didn't,
also.
I didn't see that. I saw,
You saw the
Where-
realignment proposal,
right,
but not the
yes.
numbers.
Not the
correct,
numbers.
which is very helpful.
Yes.
I understand.
Manoli,
all-
do you have a question?
I also understand
Karen,
in Adams,
hold on.
isn't 3C voting with you?
Yeah,
There
they
was
do
one-
now. They do
okay.
now. So it doesn't matter.
And she has a concern about the UDC location as well. So we're working with her to identify what would be a good location for that SMD as well.
Bob, you have a question, comment?
Just a quick comment. I think this is a great idea for simplifying the process and saving money. I think saving the ANC commissioners some time and effort by being in different places is the least significant part of this. And on one of the early things, you had a list of 5 points, and I think they were just upside down. I know it was going to commissioners, but that it was convenient for us was the least important thing. In my particular case, I know that a lot of people in 3C04 currently go to Burke, and they're going to have a much shorter walk now, so I'm pleased for them. Most of my constituents are going to the same place.
Great, thank you. Does anyone in the
Actually,
audience have a quick question? Oh,
No,
Manoli.
so, thank you for coming tonight, and again, I want to repeat what others have said about the succinct and clear presentation. I just want to take an opportunity, since you're here tonight, to make a plea on a different issue. I ran for the first time last year, and I could not get a straight answer out of anybody at the Board of Elections or DDOT or DPW about election signs in public space. In fact, the brochure that was handed out was wrong. And just for the next, I'm undecided as to whether or not to run again, but I'm pretty convinced that Jack Evans's signs are in some way not hung legally, because I couldn't figure out how there was an actual legal way to put a sign up in public space in the District of Columbia. So just for future reference.
Yes.
Great. Does anyone in the audience have a quick question?
Are there any single-member districts which are quite large, which might therefore have more than one precinct, so that people don't have to walk between the districts?
We have a number of SMDs that are very large in territory, and the initial proposal was to have all of those SMD registered voters go to one location. The commissioners have spoken to us about that and would like for us to either leave them as they are or come up with a different proposal. So we've walked back from the purest implementation of the plan, which would be one SMD per precinct, to looking back at splits. Currently, we have splits, and you've heard us use that terminology. The splits represent the number of precincts that an SMD may appear in. So, as I indicated before, we have 296 SMDs. We have 551 splits. So, we'd like to eliminate those 551 splits. But in some instances, we will find ourselves with at least a few splits.
Great. Thank you for coming tonight and telling us about this a little bit more insight. And I'll get back to you on a location.
Yes. Thank you for having us, and we look forward to your comments.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item is a quick introduction, if Kim Campbell's here, from the Hearst Recreation Center. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
My name is Kim Campbell. I'm the site manager from Hearst Recreation Center. I'd like to say hi to some of my fellow co-workers back there I see from DPR. I just wanted to come and introduce myself because I've been trying to get, to meet my council person. I've been talking to Adam through email, but I don't want to take too much of your time, but I want to let you know we are at Hearst Recreation Center. There's Bible programs going there. I've been with DC Parks and Recreation for 30 years. So I've been out here on the field for these children for a long time, and the adults and seniors. The Recreation Center is not just for children. We want to let you know we have a lot of activities going on. We have schedules going on. So if you have any kids or any activities you like to see going on you would like to see happen at Hearst Recreation Center, or you have time to volunteer, we would love to see you at Hearst Recreation Center. There's a whole lot of children over there. Maybe you can step in. Some of you ANC persons can step in and see us sometimes. We accept donations. We have a list of items that's needed. We have donation forms you can get and as tax write-off. And also, if you have time just to volunteer, we are very unstaffed at Hearst Recreation Center. There's 2 recreation specialists on site. Then we have a person there that does cooperative play. She's a loner from Friendship, and you all call it Turtle Park. So the cooperative play is in our building from 9 to 12. So if you have any kids from ages 1 to 3, we still have slots available. So, you can go online at dpr.dc.gov, or you can email me or come by and I'll help you walk you through the online process. I can be reached at kim.campbell@dc.gov or 202-282-2207. So come by 3950 37th Street. We're there from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Also start looking online in January for summer camp registration. So don't forget dpr.dc.gov. And remember, we always look for volunteers. And if you're in the area tomorrow, we'll be having Thanksgiving dinner from 3:30 to 6. And you all are welcome. And also, I want to say something to my volunteers, some of my volunteers here. John Settles, his kids go to my rec center, and he's a vital part of starting our Friends of Hearst Recreation Center. Also, David. Come on, David. They really advocate for us, and we need a recreation center at Hearst Recreation Center. We have a lot of land out there to build on, but we do not have the space for the amount of participants that we have at that recreation center. It's a whole lot going on. So any of y'all interested in Zumba, anything, adults, come on by, because it's very underutilized after 6 p.m. So I would like to see some of you all come visit us. And thank you for your time.
Give us your phone
Give
number
a
again.
round of applause for Kim Campbell.
You have any questions for me?
Give me your phone number again.
That's 202-282-2207.
Is it? Okay.
And we are located at 3950 37th Street. We're right on that same campus with Hearst, and that traffic is affecting Hearst Recreation Center too. That traffic's coming from Sidwell. I can't even get into work. When I leave my staff meetings, I have to park all the way behind the park or down the street because they block it off at a certain time, and Hearst Elementary have to block theirs off. So his Sidwell is on one side, taking up the whole side. Then you have DC public school buses picking up. So we can't even get through there. It's just a traffic jam there. Starting like at 3:05 all the way to like 3:45. It's really bad. So I think that needs to be looked at for safety concerns, accidents, everything. Some kids do walk, are on foot walking. So it is a safety hazard, even for staff and for parents. That is a nightmare. I'll beg you all to come out and look. Just come by tomorrow around 3:15, and you'll see. The federal police is at each corner, because we have the Obama kids that go to Sidwell Friends. But that traffic is a nightmare, so please revisit that.
Nice. Hopefully you'll join our committee and give us some insight.
I got to look at it because DC, if the district government allows me to do that.
Yeah. Or you can just give some comments.
Yes,
figure
I'll
it
give
out.
some comments.
But
Thank you.
I go over there every day, so we're gonna
Okay.
work on that. We're gonna work on the traffic.
All right, so y'all have my email, so y'all can reach me, and anybody feel free. I'm always open to suggestions because I'm really looking to build our recreation center. Maybe you all can talk to the mayor about, because he came to visit us in May when he visited Hearst Elementary School, and he said he was going to do something about the size of the rec center because he didn't know the number of participation of the kids that's there. So I guess Recreation is looking at it too. So please push for Hearst Recreation Center to get a larger facility. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Mary Beth, you have a quick question?
Hi,
Go ahead, Ms.
Ms.
Mary.
Campbell. I am looking at your list of donations
Yes.
needed, and I'm just wondering if somebody has these, games and tables and things, can they just bring them by?
Yes, and you can. I have a donation slip.
Okay.
I have a donation form. Because we are in need of like a flat screen, stuff like that, and video equipment, stuff we can play our games and stuff on instead of moving a big heavy television from a table to table, stuff like that. We're in a very need, so it's Christmas time, so be a blessing.
Great. Thank you very much for coming. All right, next up we have Lamada talking about the Van Ness escalators and their repair and refurbishment. Welcome again to one of our meetings.
Good evening. My name's Ann Chisholm. I'm the DC Government Relations Officer at Metro. And first I want to start by thanking you for your patience as we begin to rebuild your Metro system and improve the safety. And we're here tonight to talk about the replacement of the escalators at the Van Ness station, and also to ask you for your patience as we continue to do this. With me tonight is Lonnie Murray, General Superintendent, and also Cedric Watson, and they will be talking to you about the replacement of the escalators.
First, I just want to reiterate the thanks for the patience while we continue to renovate the Metro Rail system. A large part of that is the escalator replacement project, which is getting underway, and Van Ness is the starting point for that large-scale project. We're going to replace 128 escalators in total as part of this project. Van Ness was chosen as the first location due to some structural issues we had with the existing equipment due to corrosion over the years. Cedric's going to explain more about the project in detail, but I just kind of want to give you an overview. 6 of the 8 escalators at Van Ness are going to be replaced. We're starting with the 3 entrance units, the 2 on the east side, then moving to the single unit on the west side, and then at some point in, I think it's 2 years, we're going to come back and do the 3 long escalators in the middle of the escalator from the upper mezzanine to the lower mezzanine. The 2 platform escalators are in good condition. They've been out of the weather, so they're not going to be replaced at this time. Other stations to follow, we've started at Mount Vernon Square and Georgia Avenue. Shady Grove and Bethesda will be following very soon. And then we'll be moving eventually to some other stations in this area like Cleveland Park. So I guess you want to start with the detailed presentation.
Sure.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. As Lonnie has shared with you all, we have a very large-scale project on the way starting in the Metro Rail system, which will cover a span of anywhere from 5 to 7 years. But most importantly, in your community, as we stated, the Van Ness station is our first station that we started as of November 4th. That project itself will take place for about 19 weeks, and that's so that we can replace both escalators on the east entrance. The challenge there and why we chose to close the entrance on the east entrance is because of safety. Because there are only 2 escalators in that wellway, and considering the safety of the workers and the short and limited space that we have in that area, we felt it would be beneficial that we could expedite the project as opposed to taking over 40 weeks to do the job. If we consolidated it and closed the entrance, that we'd be able to deliver the escalators back to you in a shorter period of time, and within 19 weeks. And I'd like to share with you the project is on schedule, on time. We're making good progress there, and we hope to have it return early March of next year, and then, you know, continue on with the process. But again, as we would like to say, we thank you all for your patience here in the community, and anything we can do to help, you know, try to reduce any of the impact, please feel free to let us know. But again, we just want to thank you and let you know that we appreciate you and your patience in the system.
Great, thank you. I guess you have a few minutes for a couple questions.
Sure.
Does Mary Beth, you have a question?
Yeah, I know people are relying more heavily on the elevator on the west side.
Yes.
And I just wanted to make sure that, I know that elevator has been repaired recently, but are you all sort of giving extra diligence to the elevator just to make sure it's in good working condition?
Good question. Absolutely. We also have personnel stationed through the duration of the revenue service, someone on site there every day, so that it gives it the attention that you just spoke to, and making sure the equipment is running in good shape.
I have a couple of questions. One, is it possible for a Metro policeman to help us getting people to the west side?
I would have to bring that to their attention. I don't know how that works in conjunction with station traffic officer from the transit system there, but I can certainly ask.
I know it's been very difficult for a lot of the residents, and especially in my building, because we have a lot of residents who are elderly or handicapped and need use of that elevator. In the event, where do we find your person in the Metro station? How do we reach them if the elevator is broken? You said you have somebody stationed there, but
Yes.
where are they?
Well, they're the mechanics. They're in the station, physically in the station, or if they're not, they're visibly in
Because right now they're behind blue, you know, there's big blue surrounding the elevator.
That's the construction project itself. But as far as the service technicians that respond to any service calls on the elevator that's in operation, they're physically in the station, either on site.
Because I have to be honest, I use that Metro quite a bit, and I've been down there. I have never seen anybody there.
I
I
assume
mean,
we can
how do we
speak to the
find them?
person in the booth and they can find
Right,
them.
exactly. The person won't be, unless there's a piece of equipment that's out of service, you probably won't see them. They'll be stationed in the station, but they'll probably be in one of our mechanical rooms. So if you use the intercom to talk to the station manager, they can page
Find the person?
Right,
Okay.
right.
Anyone else? Sally?
I have a question on at one point, somebody said that you all were going to remove the street tree right in front of the bank of escalators. I've noticed that the tape has been removed and I don't see a dot on the tree. Could you elaborate on anything with the plaza being changed or the plant material?
My understanding from our contractor, they no longer had to remove the tree.
Good.
The tree did not have to be moved.
And it was a healthy tree.
Right.
No,
Right.
that's good.
Yeah, that was not.
Because
right,
I
so it's- we
actually
didn't want-
put
we didn't
that
have
in
to, right.
on.
Right, if we didn't have to remove it, leave all flora if at all possible. If we could work around it to get the crane in, then bring it in. So we had them rework their plan. The initial plan, as you mentioned, was to remove the tree. And we had them look at their plan again, look at access points. We made a few changes so that we could access it from the north side of the station rather than the south side of the station. And so we were able to retain that tree.
And what kind of signage do you have do you have enough signage in the area to direct pedestrians to the west side?
Well, the signage, we have signage on both sides, so as individuals are coming out of the station, we have signs posted in the station. And then from on the street level, we have the signs that's on the barricades themselves. And that's where the majority of our signage is at this time.
Great. I have an unrelated question.
Yes.
Somewhat related. So I received a number of phone calls. There's a bus stop in front of the CVS right near the metro station entrance. And a few people have called. There's like a homeless person that takes up 2 of the 3 seats. Is that a Metro Police issue or do I call MPD?
That would be MTV.
Okay. I'll talk to them. All right, thanks. Is anyone in the audience?
And
Yeah.
I could also, if you're speaking about the shelter.
Yeah, it's in the bus
I will
shelter.
also contact DDOT because the physical shelter belongs to DDOT. So
Okay.
I'll call that to the attention as well.
Okay.
I think when the homeless person is not in the shelter, he's sitting on the bench by the, where the bicycle rack is.
It's I don't, it's a woman, but I don't
Well, there's
know.
a man
There's a
also.
few. There's a
There's
few,
a few
but there's
homeless
one,
people.
and I've had a lot of residents call that are scared to speak to this person.
And they're
there's
afraid to go in the shelter.
elderly people that are standing outside the shelter with canes and whatnot.
Yeah.
Does anyone in the audience have a question about the Van Ness project?
Jane.
If you don't mind satisfying a bit of curiosity, and I think it also helps the public when they understand a little better.
Yes.
What part of the process takes so long? I have no idea what's involved in changing out escalators.
Well, first there's the demolition process of the escalator, the existing escalator. They have to be broken down to the actual backbone level, which we identify as our truss to structure, and all the components removed, hauled away, and then we have to go to the actual removal of each individual truss. And then once we get the trusses out, then there's a survey of the wellway, the actual structure, which the escalators have been, pocketed for the past over 30 plus years. So we go in and we refurbish that area, and then the population comes back of dropping the escalator, the new escalators back in the hole. Once the escalators are now in place in the wellway, then all the activity to wire them up, attach them back to the electrical circuits and all that, that's the more of the man hours that it takes to assemble, running, and testing. And for the most part, that's the long end of it, but it works better when you don't have a lot of demo. With new installations, as you know, the truck rolls up, they unpackage the escalator, and they drop it in a hole in the new building. Well, we're dealing with existing structures, which, we have a canopy over the top of the wellway. We have to work around that. We have all the different challenges that go along with it.
So it's done by hand. So it's not a process of cutting it up, cutting up the old escalator. So for safety reasons, we don't allow contractors or amount of personnel to essentially torch existing equipment. So it all has to be disassembled by hand. So that takes a little bit longer than if we're thinking of like a type of a car demolition or some other type of demolition process. It's all done by hand because there's no torch, no gas fire torch allowed in the metro system for safety reasons. So that might add some time.
And it actually leads to one other little follow-up question. Since they've had the canopies up, how much improvement have you seen in terms of, less maintenance, things like that? Have they really made a difference from what you?
No.
Well, in my opinion, I believe they extended the life cycle of our escalators. The reliability has increased greatly. Anytime you see a building or anything that's been built over top of the system, the reliability of the elevators have increased, and that's been my experience over the years. It definitely makes a big difference. When they're exposed to the water, the rain, and all the different conditions, the salt and everything disposed on them, they tend not to last very long. We've been very fortunate that with the Van Ness escalator, we have extended its service life cycle with that canopy because of the corrosion that we've identified once we've removed all the paneling from there was very severe to the structure. So that's why, again, one of the reasons why it was chosen, because of that. But for 30 plus years, it has endured.
I think you really see the benefit with the new equipment and the canopy. So the existing equipment didn't have a canopy for for decades, essentially. So the damage had already been done. So with the new equipment and the canopy already in place, you should really see the benefits.
Great. Does anyone else in the audience have a question? Karen, you have a quick question?
If
not
I
editorial.
if I understood you correctly, after you finish the east side escalators, you're going to do the one on the west side?
Yes.
Immediately after?
Not immediately after.
Do you know when?
Well, we're talking about a year or so after. We're working with our contractor now to see if we can speed that up. did not want to impose impact greatly right after the same time. We wanted to move away from that and then come back. And then, as Mr. Murray said, we would come in and do the longer units and use that passageway to enter and exit with the longer units.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming to our meeting and
Thank
telling us
you.
about this. Next up is an update from Stacy West, the Department of Parks and Recreation, regarding the Forest Hills Playground reconstruction.
Thank you. I am Stacy West, a community planner with DPR. Tonight I also have Jennifer Battle. She is a contractor with the Department of General Services who will be monitoring and overseeing our construction and maintenance of this park. So I'll talk a little bit about the design of this playground and how we got to this point, and Jennifer will address what comes next and how we construct the project. I know many of you know that this has been in the works for a while, and I believe you've had an update to your ANC before, and so I don't want to rehash too much, but if you're not familiar, this was a project that was announced by the mayor in October of 2012 to renovate all of the city's playgrounds, and so Forest Hills is on the list for us to do that, and both in meetings last fall and some meetings in the spring, we got ideas from the community. We worked a lot with Sally as well as the Friends of Forest Hills to kind of get a sense for what would be appropriate in the space and what would make it a nice and attractive play space. One of our big goals is to also make it a space that's multi-generational and not just a small children's playground. And so we came back to the community September 12th with a design that was done in conjunction with Smith Studios and the Trust for Public Land. And from that, we took we came back with the concept design, took comments at that meeting as well as online about the concept, and that's how we got to the final concept that I have tonight to explain. And Jennifer will explain a little bit about how this gets turned into what's actually built. But in general, you all have such great tree canopy here. There was a lot of interest from the community in keeping a nice tree canopy and keeping a very natural theme and feel to the playground, and so that's what we're trying to do with this concept. So the entrances to the playground will still remain relatively the same. You can come in off of Chesapeake Street or off of the path in the middle of the park. And when you do that, the sandbox will be relatively in the same location, but a newer sandbox designed to keep the sand in a little bit more than what it is now. So we hope that overall this is a big improvement maintenance-wise, but everything is very natural themed. So the sandbox, the idea is that it's sand within kind of a rock wall area. The equipment itself is designed to look like wood. We don't build wood playgrounds new anymore with DPR, so we do try to get a composite material. It's pretty similar to Trex, and that's what the equipment is built out of. There's some other interesting themes with it, little log crawls that kids can crawl through, leaves that they can play on. Overall, the feedback from the community was that we needed to ensure that equipment could challenge older children, that there was a lot of climbing features, and so we attempted to get that both in little kids structures and older kids structures as well. I think one of the biggest highlights of this area is where the basketball court is now. That's going away, and we're turning that into more of a picnic area. So if you're there with your kids, you can sit, you can enjoy the shade. If you're there without kids, you can still sit and enjoy the shade. But that, as a basketball court, wasn't really working in that space. And so we've moved the ability to play basketball to the Brandywine Street entrance to the park with a half court that's designed a little more for the older kids. So if you've got teens or tweens that come to the park, they'll still have something to do there too. Next to that space, we also have adult fitness equipment. I want to give kudos to the young man that came to the meeting who advocated for that. We had a teenager who came to the meeting, and initially we did not show adult fitness equipment, and that was his only request. So we're happy to honor the teenage constituency around here and to provide this outdoor fitness equipment. It's been pretty popular at many of our other parks that we've recently redone, so we're happy to bring that here as well.
Where's the adult?
Oh, it's
area?
down off of the Brandywine Street entrance. So in a sense, it kind of makes the park a little more active on the southern side by Brandywine and a little more still just playground oriented on the northern side. I know you all have recently redone your tennis court. We are looking at the possibility of putting in a new practice backboard in that court as well. So that'll enhance that area a little bit more. Overall, our goal is to make this site as attractive and as functional as possible. So we'll be looking at adding in some lighting along the pathway so that it's safe to walk there at night or even in the afternoon now in the winter. We'll also be adding benches. That's a pretty standard amenity that we look at when updating these playgrounds. By request from the community, there was interest in seeing what could double as an amphitheater or seating area. We will be taking out the old gazebo that's there now, that's structurally unsound and we can't keep it. But we're hoping that with the existing tree canopy and this new amphitheater area, as well as some picnic tables there, that it expands the opportunities for gathering at the site. As with all of our projects, we intend to meet or exceed all of the new stormwater regulations. So some of the features on the site will include new rain gardens. All of our plans go through DDOE to vet the stormwater capabilities, so we'll be working with them to do that. Sally, is there anything else you want to highlight about the concept?
Well, the rain gardens, which is great. It's been a pleasure working with Stacy and her team on this. We've come a long ways from the first concept. It was great to get the adult equipment back and also provide more of the community space and more multi-generational. I think that was a big kudo for you all to be able to do it, your team to do that. We look really forward to it. Thank you for saying we're going to have some lighting. That is something we've been pushing. Something that Stacy didn't mention is they're also planning on putting pervious paving for the main pathway from Chesapeake to Brandywine. So that will help with the tree structures that they're putting in and also a lot more erosion control. So we really appreciate that. Thank you.
And we hope that what you get from this is a sense of whimsy and fun when you go to this site. I know it's such a loved playground now. We want to make sure that that continues and that it's something that's a treasure. And I think a testament to the Friends of Forest Hills is that when I suggested recently redone playgrounds, they went to them and told me what their kids liked. So that really helped with the playground equipment. So I think you all can be pleased that this was something that really came out of community input. And I'll let Jennifer get to the less fun part, which is things like schedule and stuff like that.
Yes. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jennifer Battle. I currently work in the Department of General Services. The Department of General Services is the DC agency that constructs and builds and oversees and monitors all the construction projects for the various agencies in the city. And currently we are working with DPR and getting this constructed. So now that we have a final concept, the next steps pretty much are soliciting general contractors to build this, and we hope to put the solicitation out early December. We're looking at possibly awarding this to a general contractor late February? Yes, late February, early March, with construction starting as soon as the ground thaws, and then hopefully opening up this playground mid-summer of 2014. So that's their schedule currently right now.
Great. Are there any commissioners with questions? Bob?
I think it's a great plan. Let me get that out first. Is there a place to be able to put a capital bike share station anywhere around the perimeter? Probably Brandywine because it needs sunlight.
I don't know, the size is kind of large for, you'd have to make the sidewalk bigger, I think.
It's something, I know we've been working a lot with DDOT to identify parks where that's a possibility. I haven't seen that list of late. It's something I can ask to see if they looked into that.
I don't think they can right now, and I think they were certainly waiting for your design, but if that's something we can add, I think it would be a big plus. And we certainly need something around that area in terms of the capital bike share station. And I think it would be nice to have that near the park.
Anyone else? Karen?
A couple of questions. Who is going to maintain the park once it's built?
So again, the Department of General Services maintains many and most of the government properties here in the city. Some things are through DPW, like some of the trash and recyclable stuff, but for the most part, the park will be maintained by DGS. And when I say maintained, like light bulbs, lawn care, maintenance, landscaping.
What about maintenance of the equipment and all of that?
Same thing, DGS as well.
DGS, okay. Got a question. Right now, there's a porta potty there near the park.
There is a porta potty that is
Near
at
the
the plate,
baseball.
near the baseball.
Yeah. Who's maintaining that and who does it belong to?
So we just don't put porta potties out on the
Well, that's
site
why
unless
I'm
it's
asking.
instruction.
That's
So,
why I'm questioning it.
I mean, we can look into it and find out. And
Yeah, I suspect that that's an arrangement that the Little League has with our permits office. Unfortunately, I don't know all the details of
Can
their-
you please find out because it's not being maintained? I mean, we don't need a porta potty in the middle of our park.
I mean, Stacy and Jennifer, thank you for, we maybe need to clarify. This project is on the west side of the playground.
No, I
The east side
understand.
of, so
I
everybody
guess I
understands
was
in the
just
audience,
asking.
though, the east side of the playground is the baseball field. It's got landscaping, it's got a art sculpture, a batting cage, and some chairs and tables that we're going to have taken out, defunct.
No, but the reason I guess I was asking was because of maintenance, because we're going to have new picnic tables, we're going to
Right.
have trash and everything else from them. And I wanted to make sure that, as to who's going to pick it up.
And we have had some issues, as you know, and we've had some homeless issues, which may go away if we don't have cover at this point. We will see how that comes out. But maintenance is a very big issue.
Well, and certainly that's part of the goal of the new playgrounds. Our top priority is to make sure that they're accessible sites, but another priority is to also make sure that there's low maintenance as possible so that we have as few of issues as possible.
That's why I was questioning, is it going to be DGS, DPW? Who's going to be responsible for the maintenance of a lot of this?
Again, DPW is public works. They're only responsible for trash. I don't think they maintain any land. DGS, this is the park property is under DGS. DGS would actually maintain.
Okay. And I was looking at this new community circle. Can you explain that a little bit? What that is?
So the concept is that this is a hill right now coming down off of the baseball field. And so this would be an area that's set in a little bit almost terraced so that you could have a performance there if you wanted. If you wanted to have a picnic there, you could sit. But it would be more of a seating and gathering area.
Okay.
Manoli?
I'd say as a former board member of Friends of Forest Hills Playground, I can attest to the enthusiasm of the members of the organization, and I know it's taken some time to get here, but I want to congratulate you on good work to this point, and we'll look forward to the renovations.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you all at the park next summer.
Great.
Thank you
Too bad
for
it won't be
coming.
open before then.
I know, it's the tricky weather, right? Well, thank you very much.
Does anyone in the audience have a quick question at all? Okay. Well, thank you for these great plans.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right, next up is discussion and possible resolution regarding reconstruction of Broad Branch Road. At a prior meeting, we had discussed this and did make a resolution on this, and I think we were waiting to move forward on anything else until the environmental assessment came out, which it did. So I'll turn it over to Mary Beth to kind of give some background, and if she has a resolution to propose it, and then we can have discussion and questions.
Great. Thank you. Most of the Broad Branch Road rehabilitation is in my single-member district. And I'd like to start by commending the Department of Transportation and Parsons and the Federal Highway Administration for their thorough and thoughtful analysis that went into the environmental assessment. It's provided many evenings of entertaining reading. I spend a lot of time in this area walking the dog and driving my son to school. And I'd like to ride my bike, but I feel like it's too dangerous. I don't trust myself enough on a bike along Broad Branch. But I've thought about this for a really long time, and it's actually part of the reason that I decided to run for the ANC. We moved to Forest Hills to be closer to Rock Creek Park, and the idea of improving access for pedestrians and cyclists and improving the motorist experience, I think is really important. When you look at the objective of the National Park Service, the reason that it was founded in the 1800s in part was to connect people to nature. And certainly as chairman of the Van Ness Vision Committee, that's also something that we want to do, is connect our neighborhood and visitors to our neighborhood with Rock Creek Park. So in the course of trying to figure out a way to come up with a solution, I kept looking for option 5. We have 4 options here, and we looked really hard to try to find option 5. And unfortunately, I don't think we found it. Maybe we didn't look hard enough, or we didn't look fast enough. But I think that our ANC resolution that was passed a few months ago emphasized our eagerness to try to improve cycling and pedestrian access and stormwater management. And option 4 appears to be the only one of the 4 options that addresses those 3 concerns. So for that reason, I would offer a resolution that supports option 4 from the environmental assessment. I think there are 5 reasons to support option 4, and I'm just going to go through this very quickly, and it basically parallels the language of the resolution. So I think the 5 reasons to support option 4 are to increase access to Rock Creek Park, to enhance safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists, to improve stormwater management, to prevent erosion and future tree loss, and to encourage Maryland and DC commuters to cycle to work. I have 5 concerns about option 4, and the resolution addresses 4 of those 5 concerns. The 5th will be addressed in comments. My first concern is that I would like to strongly recommend that the Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration coordinate with other agencies as they do this work. So, for example, as many people are aware, the DC Water is working on a project in Soapstone Valley to revitalize the sewers. I would suggest that this is a great time for DDOT to coordinate with DC Water so that we're not digging up the streets twice. They're hanging power lines. I'm sure there are people in the audience who drive past those power lines every day, fearful that they're going to get caught on them. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to coordinate with PEPCO and bury those darn power lines. I think there are also opportunities to coordinate with DDOE, Department of Environment, on stormwater management. I feel like that's probably addressed in the environmental assessment, but again, just in the interest of expressing eagerness for coordination, I would include DDOE. My second concern is I would hope that we could minimize tree removal. As many of you know, we've worked very hard on the Soapstone project to reduce the number of trees being taken down. The tree removal the maximum tree removal for option 4 is, I believe it's
460.
450, 460.
460.
460. And if you look at option 2, well, let me just say quickly, option 1 is a baseline, which would involve just the safety and routine maintenance of the road. That's option 1. Option 2 is stormwater management. Option 2 would involve the removal of 285 trees. Option 3 adds a sidewalk, and that's 462 trees. Option 4 is the sidewalk and the bike path, and mysteriously that drops to 460 rather than 462. That's 460 trees too many as far as I'm concerned, but realistically, this is next to a roadway. It's over 1.5 miles long, so it's approximately 1 tree every 450 feet. I'm not crazy about any of that, but I would like to assert in the resolution that we suggest where possible that the trees be protected and that we minimize tree removal. My fourth concern is that I would hope that the Department of Transportation would partner with adjoining landowners and embassies, particularly Italy and Malaysia, who are most affected by this, but also the other adjoining landowners, to try to work cooperatively and positively to make this a positive thing for the community. And finally, I'd like to suggest that we incorporate pervious pavement where possible, for example, the bike path and the sidewalk. I haven't seen that in any of the material, and I see you're doing that in the playground. I'm sure that's Commissioner Gresham's fine touch, and I would hope that that you all would support our request to add pervious pavement where possible.
The bike path is actually on the road, so you'd have to make the road pervious in order to make the bike path. Yeah.
Okay.
But certainly the sidewalk.
Great. And I guess, would you like to propose a resolution?
Okay. So I would propose a resolution regarding the rehabilitation of Broad Branch Road. Do you want me to just read it quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Whereas ANC 3F commends DDOT, FHA, and Parsons for thoughtful and comprehensive analysis in the environmental assessment and providing ample opportunity to the community to weigh in with comments and questions. Whereas on June 18, 2013, ANC 3F passed a resolution unanimously supporting safer pedestrian and cycling access to Rock Creek Park and minimizing stormwater runoff to protect the stream bed and prevent erosion. Whereas while less intrusive options have been explored, option 4 appears to be the only vetted option to address these concerns. Whereas option 4 will improve access to Rock Creek Park for all modes of transportation. Whereas option 4 enhances safety for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists. Whereas option 4 improves stormwater management. Whereas option 4 prevents erosion of soil and tree loss due to erosion. Whereas option 4 encourages commuters in both DC and Maryland to cycle, run, or walk to work. Now, therefore, be it resolved that ANC 3F supports option 4 of the proposed Broad Branch Road rehabilitation options, provided that ANC 3F encourages DDOT to be proactive in coordinating with other agencies so that all construction work can be timed where possible to minimize environmental impact and road closures. By way of example, DDOT should coordinate with DC Water during its soapstone sewer improvement project. DDOT should coordinate with PEPCO to bury power lines, and DDOT should coordinate with DDOE to take all reasonable steps to prevent erosion. ANC 3F encourages DDOT to take all reasonable steps to minimize the number of trees damaged or lost due to this work. Each tree removed should be replaced with a native tree, and I think we're going to... Well,
You go ahead and read it.
Okay, at least 3 years old, and I will accept a friendly amendment with Casey Tree's language from Commissioner Summerskill on that. Option 4 estimates that up to 460 trees could be impacted with a length of approximately 1.5 miles. That translates to about 1 tree every 450 feet. ANC 3F requests that where technically feasible, DDOT engineers seek ways to lower the proposed retaining walls along the west side of the road so that pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists experience a minimal interruption of the natural view. Be it further resolved that ANC 3F urges DDOT to incorporate pervious pavement where possible, in particular for the sidewalk and bike path. Be it further resolved that Mary Beth Ray be authorized to speak at any hearings on the topic of the Broad Branch Road rehabilitation on behalf of ANC 3F.
Great. Is there a second for this resolution? Second. Second by Commissioner Summersgill. We'll now begin discussion of the resolution. We'll start at the end with David and work our way down. David, do you have anything on this?
No, I think it's a good resolution.
Thanks. Bob?
As mentioned, I'd like to make the part of the resolution on the size of the trees or the age of the trees. I'd like to replace that with some language from Casey Trees about what's actually recommended in terms of tree replacement. But I don't want to rush the language now. I want to make it conditional on that for getting some of that language better tomorrow, if that's all right. It's the same idea where we want to get the best tree replacement policy, just not
A more mature tree.
not necessarily.
Well, I'd like to know a little bit more about what I'm voting on.
Do you have a hard copy of this resolution?
Am I voting for younger trees, older trees?
No, more mature trees.
Trees that have a greater chance of survivability and some information from Casey Trees about how to make the trees more survivable.
Is it the same language we basically used in the SAW project?
No.
Probably. I don't.
It's similar.
I don't know.
I'll have to look at that.
I mean, I would accept a friendly amendment that, supports essentially healthy, mature trees where possible. I mean, that's what you're aiming for.
Not necessarily mature, because larger trees are going to have more shock and tend not to do as well. So smaller trees are actually better for planting.
Yeah, that's what the language says in Casey Tree. That's why UFA plants the 3-inch diameter trees, because they're smaller trees that can take more pressure and more shock, and they try to get species. Maybe we need to add that, certain species that are indigenous to the area.
Native species. Yeah.
Native species.
Right.
So I think the mature trees, I agree with Bob on this, that
That's fine.
mature
we want
is a
something
word
that's
we'll
gonna
have to
We
be
want something
careful
that
with.
will mature.
Yeah, that will mature.
Right.
Can somebody
Smaller trees tend to have fewer roots cut when you dig out the ball. That's the basic reason why a smaller tree does better.
Well, Bob, didn't you sent something to Mary Beth?
I did, and I'd like to refine that language a bit.
I mean, it was a little long, is what I remember.
Yeah,
That's
it is a
why
little
I'm
long.
trying
I'd like to refine that a bit,
Okay.
if I can have the leeway of making that language
Could you
provisional.
pass it by me, if you don't mind, the language on the trees before we finalize it?
Can I read what you said?
Yep, please.
So
Go
the
ahead.
gist
You
of
have
what Bob circulated is that the trees will comply with DDOT's engineering standards for tree protection, such as installing fencing around trees to ensure they survive. Plant a minimum of 3 trees on site for every 1 tree over 4 inches being proposed to be removed, and utilize canopy trees in landscape plan and incorporate storm water management. So something similar to that.
Yeah, I'd just
Yes.
like to refine that language a little bit. But that's the gist of it, yes.
I mean, do you think we're going to be able to get 3 trees on site for every 1 tree?
Probably not on site, but
I mean,
certainly
that
along
might be
the
a little
park.
excessive for what they're having to take out.
Not if they're larger trees, no.
No, because you're taking out big trees.
Well, that's what we don't know. It's not like soapstone where we know that they've identified the size of the trees. I don't remember reading anything in the report that identifies the size.
It's 4 inches and over.
They are
4 inches and over.
And they're not counting any trees that are under 4 inches.
So it could be more than 460 trees.
It is more than
Well, that's
460.
very
but-
different than soapstone. I mean, actually, they're doing better because soapstone is 18 inches.
No, but I'm just saying, we don't know the number of
Okay,
trees.
so that just, basically that language wordsmithed a little bit by Bob, we'll add
accept
into,
that as a friendly
into it.
amendment,
Okay,
yes.
thanks. Bob, do you have any more comments on this?
Well, I agree with the overall resolution, and I find that alternative 4 to be the least bad option. But I don't think they've actually met their objectives as stated in any of the plans. This one best meets their objectives and best meets our needs.
Thank you, Bob. I'll make a couple comments on my thoughts here. I've received lots and lots of emails that all of us have received, and many, many others. A lot for alternative 4, a lot against alternative 4, and to look at other alternatives. I read the entire environmental assessment on a plane ride on Monday, which was great reading. And as I read it, I mean, basically, my understanding of the view of this plan is leaving it as is not an option. So that doesn't matter that some people want that. It's not an option.
Right.
So we have option 2, which is an option which is more or less leave it as is, no sidewalks, nothing like that. So in my mind, that's not an option because I try to walk down this and it's scary and there should be really good sidewalks. So 2 might be an option. Or 3, 2 is not an option because it has no sidewalk. 3 has a sidewalk, and then you're at 4, which has sidewalk and 1 bike lane. So I looked at the charts in the plan, impacted trees, 462 in alternative 3, somehow 460 in alternative 4. So the same. I looked at the costs, $34.2 million in alternative 3, $37 million in alternative 4. Very, like less than 10% difference. And then I looked at the time frames. Alternative 3, 30 months. Alternative 4, 36 months. Not a huge amount of difference. So taking these all in consideration, given many of the emails I got that were saying, you know, yes, bikes should be able to share the road, bikes shouldn't share the road, and things like that. In my mind, if you want the bikes to share the road, I guess they can go share the road. But if you don't want them on your road, then in a bike lane is better. So after looking at all the different comments I got from people and reading this report and seeing that the changes, the price, the time frame, the tree impact is really not significantly different in my mind, I would be inclined to support this resolution with option 4. I'll turn it over to Karen. She has thoughts.
I have mixed emotions. I really do. I don't like the number of trees coming down over 4 inches, and that bothers me. But the one thing that does concern me still is we don't have an answer as to whether Malaysia or Italy are willing to give up some of their land to implement number 4.
Yeah, I've talked to DDOT, and they have spoken with the State Department, and the State Department has spoken with the embassies. I don't know what the feedback there is. Someone from the Italian embassy approached me a few months ago, and I talked to them about the possibility of a really constructive relationship and something where, you know, Italy really got behind this as something positive for the community. And that was the last I heard from them. So.
That's my biggest concern, is that, you know, we could be passing something and yet it can't get implemented because we don't have the land.
Well, I don't think that should stop us.
Yeah,
I mean, if that's going to stop us, then there's nothing we can do about it.
I mean,
that's an issue for DDOT to resolve.
Yeah,
and it's well down the road.
They know that.
So,
yes.
I mean, if that, you know, vote for it as you wish based on that thought. Do you have any other thoughts, Karen?
No.
One thing I did want to note is Commissioner Ray did reach out to DDOT because there was a lot of talk on the local listserv about who's paying for this. And right now, it looks like this would probably be 80-20, so the feds pay 80, we pay 20. So option 3, the DC taxpayers are paying $6.8 million. Option 4, we're paying $7.4 million. So it's not like $40 million of taxpayer money. So that's what we have right now. Maybe it's possible the feds would pay for it all. They don't know yet. But at least 80/20.
80/20 is fairly standard.
Yeah.
Mary Beth, is there any way to strengthen the resolution regarding the retaining walls on the west side, lowering them?
Well,
to insist on it or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, the retaining walls, let me talk about retaining walls for a minute. At the November 5th meeting, I think there was a lot of confusion about the retaining walls. And frankly, I think a lot of the concern is understandable. But my understanding of the environmental assessment is that on the east side of the road, it will never, the retaining wall will never be over 3.5 feet above the curb.
That I
Okay,
understand.
so in
The
other
other
words,
side.
as you're driving down, well, let's say you're driving north on Broad Branch, okay, and the park is on your right, then you will always be, whether you're in a car or on a bike or walking, you will always be able to look over to the park, and that wall will never be higher than 3.5 feet
It's the
from the
west side,
curb.
though, where it's 7 feet.
On the west side, okay, the trade-off, and this has something to do with option 3 and option 4 being different. The trade-off is cutting into the hillside and losing trees and building retaining walls. So in other words, the more retaining wall you have, the less you have to cut into the hillside and the fewer trees you lose. So we don't want to lose trees and we don't want retaining walls, but it doesn't work that way. It's a little bit of a quid pro quo, which is frustrating.
Well, I just,
But
I
I
do
do
like
think,
that 7
let
feet
me just say a
line.
couple more things. There is a very good chart. It's table 2-3 on page 2-18 of the environmental assessment. And that goes through each segment of retaining wall for option 4. And it gives you the height of the wall and the visible height. And then you can also cross-reference each of these segments with maps to see where that happens. The highest visible height is, I believe it's 15.75, and it's north of Davenport Street.
It's in the curve.
It's in the curve, right. When I looked at those pictures and I spoke with the DDOT people, or Parsons, I guess the lady was probably Parsons, she said she really feels that these are too high. They've overestimated the height. At the end of the day, the engineers have to build them, at the height that they need to hold that hillside up and minimize erosion. But she felt that these were higher than they're probably actually going to be.
There's only, I'll piggyback on you. The greatest one is in the curve past Davenport, and that is a very steep hill there. I mean, no matter what an option would be, there's going to be a retaining wall. The other retaining walls are at the south end, mainly at the south end of the west side. There are some in-betweens, but they are mainly in the 4 to 6 range. So the topography is kind of bumpy, but most of them are under the 4 feet, which they were trying for, from what I read. Actually, I talked to them at the hearing also about the misconception of the retaining walls. A lot of people did not understand what those retaining walls were, and they didn't understand it in quite a few comments that we've received. So I think option 4 is viable, and that they have to, if you want to save the trees, you have to do the retaining walls. You have to engineer it. Another misconception is that they talked about changing the topography of the road, and that is not what they're doing. The roadway will be basically where it is now. It is rectifying the stormwater problem where there's a lot of water sitting on the road. So option 1 and 2, they're doing that, but it's not going to be as effective as option 3 or 4 because of the width of the roadway. So that's important to consider too about the stormwater runoff.
Great, thanks.
I'd like to make one comment. When
Sure.
you say the bike, in particular for the pervious pavement, I think that's fabulous about the sidewalk. The bike path, the only way they could do that is if they go with the capital,
FlexiPave.
Was it
FlexiPave.
FlexiPave. If they go with the road version of it. I know that's fairly cost prohibitive, so I'm not sure I'd like to make that for the bike path with I think sidewalk is different because of where the sidewalk is located, but the bike path is up against the retaining wall, closer to the retaining wall on the east side. So I'd like to make a friendly amendment to taking the bike path off of the pervious pavement.
Well, can we change just to say that pervious pavement wherever possible?
Yes.
And not specify what?
That might be better.
Yeah, I think that's how it's written.
No, it says in particular for the sidewalk and bike path.
And just take out that last little
Just
bit.
that last, right?
Just take that out and say
that
where
last
possible.
piece. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's fine.
Okay. Manoli, do you have any thoughts, comments, questions?
I just want to thank Commissioner Ray for a considered resolution, and you, Chairman Tope, for your thoughtful comments. I thought they framed the subject well. I would agree that the embassy issues are not a factor in this vote. One issue I have raised, and I'm still somewhat torn on, is the Brandywine intersection.
The T intersection.
T
yeah.
intersection,
Yeah.
and I know we've been looking for the fifth way, and just have been looking at this for some time about whether or not there is a third way to retain the trees in that piece there while still improving the traffic flow, rather than making the awkward turn onto the north branch of the Y. So would offer, I guess, could come in the form of a friendly amendment for some comment on examination of improving traffic flow or traffic safety at that intersection, short of eliminating the green space in the middle of the intersection.
So
The question is whether or not, and again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but whether or not the southern branch is actually wide enough, could be widened a bit to actually accommodate two-way traffic without having to make the awkward turn.
So I asked DDOT if they could just make that a three-way stop. And honestly, I didn't understand their answer, but I think it's a possibility. So I would accept a friendly amendment to add a paragraph or whereas or be it resolved or whatever that we add a three-way stop at the intersection of Brandywine and Broad Branch. I'm not in favor of changing that to a T intersection. I think it would really change the character of the intersection. Are you okay with that?
I agree with you on that. Brandywine bothers me, and I actually agree with Manoli on this. I don't think we should do the T intersection. I think we should maintain this fairly nice little island. I'm not sure how the three-way would work. If it would work, that would be great. As you do, I come up there quite a lot. I don't think there's any problem turning south. The problem is obviously going north and turning to the east, to the west on Brandywine.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can put in the language that they study that a turn better to maintain the island? If the traffic engineers can come up with a way of maintaining the island and let them duke it out as the best way to do it?
I think I would have to agree with Sally. I don't want to mandate three-way stops, and I don't want to take out that island of trees either. But I think just some wording in there that just says that we'd like DDOT to explore, you know.
Maintaining the
Ensuring
island
that
at
the island's
Brandywine.
maintained, but explore a better traffic pattern or flow or whatever.
The problem with saying traffic flow is that that's largely talking about faster moving vehicles, and that's what we don't want for
No, I don't
pedestrians.
want that either, but I'm just saying examine
not sure I'd
a
use that
traffic
word, but-
solution or something,
Yeah.
you know, without taking out the,
Or how do they say it? Egress from one street to another.
Well, are you all opposed to stop signs?
it's not that, I just don't want to mandate it, because that might not be the better solution without DDOT exploring it. I mean, there might be something better than 3 stop signs.
So you're putting the stop sign on the north turn. You're putting the three-way stop on the north turn. You're not putting the three-way stop on the.
I think it should be I think it should be all 3. So if you're headed north on Broad Branch, if you're headed south on Broad Branch, or you're on Brandywine and you want to turn either left or right.
Yeah, so that means you're only going, 200 feet before you have to stop again.
Yeah, and that's, I think the reason
I
I'm
think
saying
that
that.
would help slow traffic down along there.
It would definitely slow it down.
You know, being honest though, Mary Beth, and I think former Commissioner Solomon's in the audience, we've run into problems with DDOT on getting 3-way stop signs in the past, or on getting 3 stop signs and
Any
stopping.
stop signs.
Getting stops, yeah, that's why I think it's better for us to ask them to come back to us with a solution of some sort
Yeah.
and let them examine it.
They're the experts.
We do have some experience in this, and typically what DDOT will say is, a stop sign is not a traffic control device, or traffic calming.
Right.
That's right.
So
It establishes right of way.
Right, it's right of way, it's visibility, those are the things that really determine it. So I think Karen has a point about not being prescriptive about what the right approach is, but I do think in the configuration, one of the things we're trying to achieve is, in making a T intersection, just like we've done with some of the things on Connecticut Avenue, one of the things you want to get rid of are these big curves, because that speeds traffic up. So there may be a way to retain the island by bringing those in, just as they planned with the T intersection, and maybe just taking the tips off of the island so that you maintain an island, but both sides come down to more of a right angle.
So it's
the
more of
turn
a
is less awkward.
rectangle than a
Exactly,
triangle.
it's more rectilinear, but you still have an island in between. So you might just want to put the aspiration in.
Yeah.
Ask them to look at the safety issues involved.
So can you read the sentence you were going to add?
I guess ANC 3F encourages traffic engineers to study the possibility of maintaining the island without, possibility of maintaining the island
So improving traffic safety and patterns while retaining the existing clump of trees. Maybe
Clump
something
of trees.
more hopeful than that.
What about ANC 3F?
It has a name, right?
ANC 3F requests DDOT traffic engineers study the Brandywine.
I don't think you need to be prescriptive on which agency actually is going to.
Well, it's DDOT.
It's DDOT.
It is
Is it-
DDOT.
what
Yeah.
is this not also, okay.
Yeah, it's DDOT.
But that part's DDOT. The
It's the
DDOT traffic
IMPA.
engineers study
Might be.
the island, whatever you want to call it, off of Brandywine Street for improved traffic safety, including reconfiguring the island, but not eliminating it or something. You know, maybe a reconfiguration, as former Commissioner Solomon said. You know, making it a square or whatever.
She said
Or rectangle or
I
whatever.
don't know how that can.
May we strike
right.
traffic safety and just make it safety?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm concerned that we don't want to be focused on vehicular safety.
No, I'm talking traffic or just say.
Just safety.
Safety
Yeah.
is fine. Just something
For all
general
modes
like
of,
that.
all
All right,
modes
you want me
of
to read that?
transportation.
Just
Something like
safety.
that.
Okay, I think I've got it.
Okay.
All right, so ANC 3F encourages DDOT traffic engineers to study the Brandywine Broad Branch intersection for improved safety by reconfiguring but not eliminating the traffic island.
That's good.
That's great.
I like it.
But instead, what was that one word you said at the very beginning? That we encourage them to? I think we
Oh,
have to say
encourage
we
it.
want them to.
Yeah,
Okay,
I wouldn't say-
request,
If you, yeah.
DDOT.
No, we don't want
And
to
that
encourage.
also be it resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, be it resolved.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think we want to be forceful.
Okay. Is there any comments from the neighbors? If you want to come up to the microphone.
Just one.
Or,
When Mary Beth read the resolution, there was one number that was incorrect. The part where you talked about 1.5 miles, 460 trees equaled 460 feet between each one. It's 17 feet between each one, not 460 feet between each one, if you do the math. You had 460 written down twice, I guess. If you divide 1.5 miles, 3,920 feet by 460,
Yeah.
you get 17.
Okay, thank you.
And I think it needs to say 460 trees over 4 inches.
Miles, yeah.
1.5 miles is 7,500 feet, not 3,900 feet, so you probably don't.
Why don't we strike that?
Just strike it.
I would strike the math.
calculate it. It's every 17 feet, like you
No,
said.
I think we can just
calculated
correct it.
I just calculated it, 17.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's 17 feet.
5250 times 1.5.
And I think it needs,
460,
and I think the resolution needs to say 460 trees
No,
over
it's-
4
It's
inches.
17. It is.
But I think it also needs to say over the 4 inches. Because it's actually more trees.
Okay. Are there any other comments? Feel free to come on up.
Hi, I'm Randy Speck. I'm the ANC Commissioner for 3G03, and I border.
Welcome.
Thank you. I know some of you already, but I border on the northern side of Broad Branch Road from Linnean to 27th Street. That's my SMD. And so I had some interest in this the same way Mary Beth does, not quite to the same extent that she does. And I just wanted to report to you what our ANC has done with regard to this. We have actually submitted comments now in support of Alternative 4. And we had some of the same provisos and recommendations that were included in your resolution that Mary Beth drafted. We actually picked some of them up from her and included those in our comments as well. So I just wanted to let you know that we are foursquare in accord with your consideration, I think, of your resolution. And we had some of the same reservations that some of you have expressed, particularly about the number of trees that were going to be damaged or removed as a result of this construction. But we came to the same conclusion that you did, that there's really not a difference between Alternative 3 and Alternative 4 in that regard. And Alternative 4 gives us an additional bike path that I think is going to be very significant in the long term. And what we were thinking about was not just the immediate term, but this is going to be probably the last reconstruction of Broad Branch Road that's going to be done for 30 or 40 years. And so we ought to take advantage of it now and improve it so that it's going to be accessible for bikers, for pedestrians, as well as for vehicles. And we think that this is a good alternative. It may not be the best, but it's a good alternative. And so I would encourage you to go forward with your resolution as it's been proposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. 3E also passed a similar resolution in support of alternative 4.
Can I make one other comment?
Sure.
Did we, I know this isn't part of the resolution, but there's always been the concern that there's not access to this when this is finally built of bikeway and sidewalk from within Forest Hills. Is there any way we could possibly add a friendly sentence that says that they need to, we would encourage that there be a connector to this?
You know, I feel like that's going to open up a whole.
It's going to open up a new can of worms.
I completely agree with you, but let's do that in December.
Okay. Just wanted to be on record that we do something, because we do have non-entrance into the park.
Okay. Jane, you have something?
To the, between the embassies and
I'm Jane Solomon. I live on Albemarle Street, former commissioner. Wanted to follow up on a couple of the tree issues. Of course, everybody is concerned about this number of trees, but I think everybody also has this mental image of, 460 lovely mature oak trees. And I just want to point out that, first of all, in the not number 1, which is the status quo, but number 2, where it's a basic redo of the existing road, as you pointed out, even that version loses 280 trees. So you know that those 280 trees, because you're basically working in the existing roadbed, are not significant trees. Most of those are, you're working in an unmanaged national park setting. So every little sapling that seeds in is growing. And a lot of those are growing into the existing retaining wall along the creek. And if there were a more active management, you wouldn't want them growing there in the first place. Second of all, when you're dealing with all these little trees, nature is going to cull them anyway. All of these trees would never grow to maturity. They will shade each other out, and only so many trees will grow. So in many respects, I think there's an over-concern about the actual number of trees. A lot of these are going to disappear regardless. So that's my first point. But secondly, I wanted to bring up something that I've not heard at all in any of this discussion, which is what we call, what is it called? Basically the sidewalk law, which, as far as I can tell, definitely applies here. I mean, it says that whenever there's a major rebuild of a road that doesn't have a sidewalk on either side of the street, one will be installed. I don't see that Broad Branch Road is different than any other road in the District of Columbia, and therefore, I don't even see option number 2 as being in compliance with the law.
Yeah, the report, I think, alludes to that fact, that
Good.
they have to build a sidewalk area.
Great. I mean, there are exceptions. Somebody on the council managed to squeeze in an exception that does give the director of DDOT some leeway for exemption. And in those cases where he or she deems the expense just to be excessive, he can opt out. Or, interestingly enough, there are cases where there would be damage to parkland, or where they need to acquire an easement or other property to establish the sidewalk. So there are exceptions that would apply here, but they are at the discretion of the director of DDOT and not the public. So, yes, sidewalks, they're the law. Lastly, I wanted to bring up I wanted to go back in time and talk about public access to the park a little bit. And I was looking today online really to kind of early days of Rock Creek Park and its meaning and why it's there and what it's supposed to do for us as a society. And very interestingly, I found, written in 1918, commissioned by the board, this is prior to the National Park Service, there was a board that was in charge of the park, and they commissioned the Olmsted brothers, which are the sons of Frederick Law. He was involved earlier and actually spent more time dealing with the mall and the more monumental elements of the city's parks. But in 1918, they weren't happy with how the park was being managed, and so they brought in the Olmsted brothers, and they wrote an extensive report on the parks in the city. And in fact, they were the ones who spent more time looking at Rock Creek Park. They wrote a lot about the Broad Branch and about the value of Soapstone Valley. It's quite interesting. So I just wanted to read this as a reminder of what the park is all about. And Section 1, justifying the value of the park. And they talk about its natural beauty and all the obvious things we know. But they then go on to say, but no matter how perfect the scenery of the park may be or may become, no matter how high its potential value, that value remains potential, except insofar as it is enjoyed by large and ever larger members of people, poor and rich alike. And that leads them to say that there are basically three management priorities for Rock Creek Park. First is to maintain its natural beauty and not to introduce strange foreign elements, non-native things. But secondly, the park must be opened up to driving, riding, and walking public. The roads, paths, and other accompaniments must be located and so built that the essential qualities of the park aren't compromised. And third, adequate transportation must be provided to and into the park for people dependent upon streetcar service. So this was then adopted and was really, widely hailed as we will never, violate. This is the spirit of Rock Creek Park. So I thought that is relevant and would be of interest to you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Jane.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Needless to say, I'm in huge support of option 4.
All right, so
that
I
to
guess
us?
I can
Okay,
scan
great.
it and circulate it.
Okay, let's do
So I guess at this point, let's bring this up for a vote. All in favor of supporting the resolution as modified, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Can we get to see it again tomorrow?
Sure.
Or whenever Mary
Are
Beth
you
has
voting
a
in
chance?
favor?
Yeah, I'm voting in favor.
Okay,
yeah.
so
I'd just
passes
like to-
unanimously.
I would just like to see it with all the final wording, including Bob's.
Sure, sure. All right, thank you. Next item is Sally's going to provide us an update on Park Van Ness.
Last week, on November 13th, we had a pre-construction community meeting. It was attended by about 20 people total, which I understand that's pretty good for those kind of meetings. Interesting questions were raised. It was a PowerPoint presentation given by Saul and Clark. They mainly went through the construction team, who was on the construction team. There's basically Don Hackney and Richard Houghton from Saul, and Jason Elliott and Lindsay Rote from Clark that we will be able to communicate with. Most of them will be on site throughout the project. They went through what they built, the Kennedy Warren and the Leon Place at Clarendon. Then they got into what the Clark Construction was going to be doing. I'll bypass a lot of that. They wanted to make the point that Clark will be full-time on the site. There'll be on-site management staff as well as SAW management staff. They will have posted emergency numbers, so if you see waters coming out of the site or, God forbid, a car has gone down in the hole, that you can call an emergency number. It is not a number for just saying that the sidewalk's closed or that a homeless guy is standing outside. It's not that kind of number. The work hours will be Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. Clark said there will not be a lot of subcontractors before 7 o'clock. The site will open at 7. They feel that most of the subcontractors will be gone by 3:30 or 4, but there still will be a presence on site with the management staff. They will be able to work on Saturdays from 7 to 7. They again feel that they will not be working till 7 o'clock. Holidays as prescribed by DCRA. There was a comment at the meeting that by Karen that asked that they definitely not work on most holidays. They said they would look into that. There are 4 basic holidays that they will not be working on, but which we all know is Thanksgiving, Christmas, July 4th, Memorial Day, July 4th, and Labor Day, so 5.
They said 4, so.
Well, they said 4, but I think they meant 5. They forgot one. There will be deliveries mainly by trucks and subcontractors. Any material coming into the site, leaving the site, has to be done between 9:30 and 3:30. There will be no parking on the east side of Connecticut during that time. And then the other 2 times are rush hour, so it's basically no parking in front of their site, except from like 7 at night till...
No, no parking period. Taking out those meters.
That's right, they're taking out the meters, so it's no parking at all, 24 hours. As far as the parking, they have told all their subcontractors to try to park away from the site because there's no parking on the site for construction. Most of the subcontractors will come by metro. They're going to come up that west side escalator. There will be vans coming from parking decks and that will drop off workers. And there might be some on-street parking, but they are asking the subs not to do that. They have gone through a dust and debris control with their subs and the main Clark Construction. There'll be there's black mesh already going up on each side of the building. There'll be water being used during demolition to cut down on the dust and debris. The trucks have to be washed when they leave the site, and they are going to be building, it's almost a deck over the Montessori school to protect the children, both on the roof and on the playground. They also, Jane, I'm going to direct this to you from your email today. You made some very good comments. They are going to put a wall up, a plywood wall, from the face of the Montessori school to the curb. They also are building a covered walkway from that plywood barrier to the entrance of the school for any dust, debris protection. They also were given recommendations from people in the audience to put peepholes through the fence, through the plywood, so the kids, both at kid level and adult level, they're going to decorate the fence, the plywood fence, with hands, or the kids are going to decorate it for Saul. They're going to try to make it a fun experience. So they are trying to be neighborly. They are trying to get the community involved. And they do realize that that is a very dangerous stopping point when a pedestrian who is not paying attention all of a sudden gets there and doesn't know what to do and feels they have to retrace their steps. So they're very aware of that. Another possible good comment, Jane, that came from you again, is putting maybe Jersey barriers or some type of solid barrier at the curb line at that plywood fence, and only have certain areas open where you can go to the retail stores and through the parking meters that are there. I think that's very good, and I will pass that on to Matthew McHugh. I think that may help a lot.
There's a nice example of that, 7th Street by the O Street Market.
Yes, there's a good one of that. I know there's some other places. I think the biggest thing they wanted to talk about is their milestones. They have started construction, they have their raised permit and their sheet and shoring permits. They're still working on their building permit. They're down at DDOT quite a lot. They have started the interior demolition already, as everybody knows, but they're going beyond that now. As of today, I discussed with Don and Richard what they foresaw. Now, with a lot of outcry by the public, the community about the sidewalk, they have a meeting tomorrow, which I somewhat said to the traffic officer tonight, that my understanding the meeting is tomorrow with DDOT staff, all the higher ups, including, I think, Bellamy, to try to come up with a better way of dealing with the sidewalk closure. They are looking at other possibilities. They're the experts. I'm only offering a certain amount. I do need to tell everyone here that I don't think we're prepared for what the construction site will really look like. It is going to be a very big hole, 270 feet by 45 feet deep, and it goes back another 200 feet. They literally have to be above that so they can dig that out, because there's no way for them to get to it. They can't get to it from the left, right, or from the back because of the park. So Saul has asked me to try for people to try to understand. They would love to try to keep the sidewalk open, but because of the logistics of the site and how they have to build, they don't have the luxury. Even bringing the sheeting and shoring, which is one of the biggest things that pushes it back to 3 feet within the curb, is that they are literally in there breaking the concrete of the existing garage, and then they're pushing it back into making retaining walls, and then they start to make a platform to build the 6 levels of garage on top of that crushed concrete that they're already built. I may have this wrong. Don, you can watch the live stream and tell me if I've got it wrong, but that's what he explained today.
We don't have 6 levels of garage.
There's 6 levels below street level.
Yeah, but that's, some of them are apartments, they're not just.
Right, but
yeah,
but
not
it's
just
garage and
Yeah,
apartments,
that's-
yes.
Make that clear. 'cause I
Okay,
think
sorry.
people are thinking
It's
six-
the concrete infrastructure. So there will be, from now until end of February, when they'll be doing that type of construction. And then after that, once they get to street level, they still have to bring in all the services to get to that, to start building to the face. They're bringing the trailers in. They were planning on bringing them in this week, but they probably won't bring them until next week. They are also bringing the large crane that looks like gobbles up all the dirt. That will be brought in at the end of the week, hopefully the first of the week. December 2nd, they're going to put the additional trailers on the site. So they're moving forward. They would like to acknowledge that they hear what the community is saying about the sidewalk being closed. They are very aware of it. They have done all they can to follow the DDOT regulations, and they're very willing to work with DDOT more to see if there's any way they can make it less painful for the community, is the word I'm going to use. There have been some very good comments. Marlene Berlin started the chain of how this was going to be, how she thought about the pedestrian problem, and DDOT is reacting to that. So hopefully after tomorrow, we'll have a little bit more update on how to deal with the sidewalk.
Great. Well, thank you. What?
I like your tweet.
Yeah. Thank you for the report. Next up.
Jane, do you want my copy?
Okay, Mary
It's
Beth
always
has
fine.
one
Yeah.
short question.
One short question. If constituents complain, who should we send it to?
Saul has asked that they, I'm so happy about this, that they first come to me as the commissioner, and then I will send it on to them.
Are you sure?
Not sure about this. I've already gotten some very interesting comments.
Cool. Thank you.
One quickie. I think
Is it a
part of
question or
no,
editorial?
no, it's not. It's neither.
Neither. It has to be one or the other.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
Well, let's not. I
Oh, I
No,
forgot to
quick,
say,
quick.
you
we have
argue.
a plan that I will be
Rather than
happy to
argue.
give.
I think the most important thing on the sidewalk people need to realize is that underneath there right now, within 3.5 feet of the curb, is their underground parking vault already. That's why they cannot put in a covered sidewalk. Because for a sidewalk needs to be, I think, 6 feet or whatever.
Yes.
And and they need to bring in their supplies through the front. And I think that's the two big issues with the sidewalk. And as far as that, I think right now, most drivers are aware of bicycles on Connecticut Avenue, and I know I look out for them when I'm driving, and I think we just have to look out for pedestrians too. Because they're gonna walk in the street no matter what you do.
They're going to do whatever they want. That's what we're already finding out.
All right, thank you, Karen. So next item, two quick comments before we do the next item. So I did look at the Office of Zoning, and the record for comments will continue to be open until further notice, at least until December 9th. So I'm hopeful that it will be extended past that point, and we will be able to talk about it at our next meeting. And I also talked to the guy working on our website, and I hopefully at the next meeting we'll have the examples. I can't show it now because it's not on my computer, but we will have the bones together. All right, so next item, miscellaneous agenda items.
Can I ask a question about the zoning? Are we planning on putting a task force together to address
I don't think
the
we have
zoning?
time for
We
task
don't
force,
have time.
so maybe we will discuss offline which of these topics people have raised we might want to consider and can think about what to do. I don't know.
Did you just say that December 9th is when they close?
December 9th is when the zoning commission will make a decision on how to proceed. But
Should we tonight do a quick resolution asking them to extend it for 120 days? Just that much of it?
Well, it's a good
are
point.
you proposing a resolution?
I would just do a quickie saying, whereas ANC 3F, I don't know, received a copy, of the zoning, of the 1,000-page zoning report 1 month ago, whereas we recognize that the zoning commission has held some hearings, that ANC 3F requests more time for our residents and for the commission to study these 1,000 pages, and we request a $120-a-day delay. Just something quick, because
Okay.
otherwise, by December 9th, we're not going to have another meeting.
Is there a second for your resolution?
And it might be,
I second that.
Okay, any discussion?
I'm going to vote no. I think we've had enough time to look at this. It's been in the works for about 5 years now.
because we're not going to get our
Any
comments
other
in by
discussion?
December 9th. Good night, Jane.
Seeing none, we can vote on Karen's resolution. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
3 in favor, all opposed, raise your hand. 3 abstain. Moi.
3-3-1, it fails.
Fails. Okay. Next item is approval of September 2013 meeting minutes. We've now had these for over a month since the last meeting, actually a month and a couple weeks. So I will make a resolution to approve the September minutes, and we'll just vote on that. All.
Is there a second?
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Next, I'd like to make a resolution to approve the October minutes. Is there a second?
That was September, we just voted on?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Good job.
Oh, we're doing both.
Second.
Is there any changes or discussion for October? They were circulated prior to this meeting, so hopefully your thoughts are in there. Anyone? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, passes unanimously. Bob, would you like to tell us a financial update?
We currently have $140,874.89 in the
Check that
account.
again? 140,000?
140,874.89. That's available. The actual balance is higher because some checks haven't cleared, including those written tonight. The next item is the approval of the fourth quarter report. I'd hoped to do it last time, but because of the nature of the calendar, our meeting fell early, and I didn't get the bank statement. I have since gotten not only the September statement, but the October statement, so we have another check that's cleared since I sent this to you Friday. So it just shows that one check for $1,100 has cleared, but otherwise it's the same. We have an ending balance at the end of September of $137,595.79. Any questions, concerns? We actually have to vote to say that we accept it.
What's this Scott Oppenheim design service?
The ad for Sales Connection.
Oh. So we're finally getting one?
Oh, we got one. We've had it for a while.
It's really nice.
It's very nice. We finally gave up on the guy who designed our business cards who wasn't moving on the ad, and we went with Adam's friend, who had a really good price and a great looking ad. So
Is the ad on that now?
yeah, it's been on for
It's been on for a couple months.
Looks
nice.
Yeah, it does. Looks really good.
Question on the website design. Is 1,100? I thought we did it to that girl.
No, we did it to her husband's company.
Oh, we did?
Jose.
Okay.
It's the first of those checks.
We need a motion to accept the
We do.
quarterly report. I so moved.
Second.
Okay.
Call for a vote.
All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And then lastly, do we have to approve any expenses?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mary Beth?
So Ken Terzian, neighbor and member of the Vision Committee and architect, designed and made these beautiful signs with his own hands. The printing cost was $131.22, and the no rust screws were $9.73. So I'd like to move that we reimburse Ken Terzian $140.95 for the signs, which were created to mark where the daffodil bulbs are planted so that somebody doesn't rake them up.
Okay. Are there any other expenses as well, or is that it?
All the other things were covered in the budget that Mary Beth spent, copying
Do
and
you want me
clubs
to
and.
tell you what I spent?
No, I don't need to know.
That's we only need to approve the $140.95 for Ken Terzian for the signs, the screws, and the little placards, and
Okay.
which have our name on it.
Cool. So there's a motion to approve this expense. Is there a second? Sally seconds. Is there any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Thank you,
Passes
Ken.
unanimously.
That's all I can say.
All right, given that's the last item, make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Manoli. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Good night.
Okay, so what are we doing in December here?
Yeah, that's